Good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining us. Before we get to the meeting's business, I'd just like to remind those who may be in the waiting room for the Zoom because you plan to make a public comment at that time on the agenda. Please look at the Zoom link, the YouTube link that is posted on the Board of Education website for the link to watch the meeting. You'll be able to see the presentation there. And then at the appropriate time, feel free to join in the waiting room in Zoom to make a public comment if you desire. I hope that helps everyone out there. I know it's a little confusing because we do have the two places. With that, welcome. Thank you for joining us. The board has already met in executive session and saluted the flag at that time. Mr. McLaughlin, can we please have a roll call?
Ms. Beckman?
Sorry, yes. Here.
Ms. Schaefer?
Here.
Mr. Salmon?
Here.
Mrs. White?
Here.
Mrs. McCune?
Here.
Mrs. Korn?
Here.
Mrs. Wooldridge?
Here.
Mr. Markarian?
Here.
Mr. Syatt?
Here.
Ms. Fox?
Here.
Mrs. Gray?
Here.
Madam President?
Thank you, Mr. McLaughlin. Good evening. This is a regular meeting of the Board of Education of Bernards Township. Notice of the time and place of the meeting was provided, and copies of that resolution were forwarded to the official newspapers as designated by the Board of Education and to the Township Clerk, and a copy of the notice was posted on the bulletin board of the Board of Education offices in accordance with the Open Public Meetings Act. Due to the public health emergency in the state of New Jersey as declared in Executive Order 103, the board will be suspending normal meeting procedures this evening and conducting a virtual meeting. Directions for accessing the virtual public meeting were posted on the district website, www.bernardsboe.com. The same directions were posted at our intended but unavailable meeting site. We very much welcome input from the public. Because this is a virtual meeting, public comment will be handled in one of three ways. Public comment method number one is the preferred method, and that's a full video via Zoom. When you're ready to make a public comment, join the Board of Education meeting via the Zoom link posted on the district webpage. Please plan for your participation in the meeting by turning on your camera and microphone, dressing appropriately, maintaining a proper background setting for your camera's view, having a quiet space, and muting the YouTube live stream of the Board of Education meeting when you are speaking so that there is no feedback with your participation in the Zoom meeting. Step two, you will be placed in a queue and admitted to the meeting when it is your turn to make a public comment. Once you see that you are admitted to the Zoom call, it will be your turn to make your public comment. Please begin your public comment by stating your full name and address. After making your public comment, please exit the Zoom meeting so that the next person in the waiting room may make their public comment. The second method is the dial-in via Zoom. When you're ready to make a public comment, join the Zoom meeting using the dial-in phone number and meeting ID posted on the district website. Please plan for your participation by having a quiet space and muting the YouTube live stream in the background so that there's no feedback in the background. Step two, you will be placed in a queue and admitted to the meeting when it is your turn to make the public comment. Once you see that you're admitted to the Zoom call, it will be your turn to make your public comment. Please begin your public comment by stating again your full name and address. After making your public comment, please exit the Zoom meeting so the next person in the waiting room can make their public comment. And the third method is if your full video or dial-in method fails, please follow the directions to submit your public comment via email btconnect@bernardsboe.com or text your comment to 908-292-3047. Please use public comment in the email subject or the beginning of the text message. Indicate your first and last name and address. In all instances, all three methods of comment, you must include your full name and your address for your comment to be included. Please be mindful of the fact that in any method, public comments are limited to a maximum of approximately 3 minutes if read aloud. One public comment is permitted on the agenda items and then another on the non-agenda items sections of the agenda. Public comments submitted via method 1 and 2 will be processed first, then comments submitted by method 3, and individuals' comments made using method 1 or 2 will not also be read into the record through method 3. The board reserves the right to limit the length of time allotted for public comment, which I think once again, we're going to stay consistent with 45 minutes for each section of public comment. In the event that time limitations prohibit the reading of a public comment received pursuant to these instructions, the comment will be published as part of the meeting minutes. No public comments will be accepted before 7 p.m. or after item 19, board forum, on the agenda. With that, we are
So it looks like, Ms. Gray, that you are frozen, at least on my screen. I believe that you were just saying that we are up to the section of our agenda for our student representative. And I do believe Juliet is here. If Juliet wants to jump in. Thanks for being here.
Yep, hello. Thank you so much once again for having me. First off, I know that all of the students are really looking forward to winter break, and some of the in-person students are especially relieved for the week-long virtual buffer after break. The decision really shows that the administration has a genuine commitment to the student safety, and I know a lot of people were really feeling relieved because I know that they might have different holiday plans, and it's just really comforting to know that once they get back, there is that buffer period. A couple updates from the high school. Despite our busy schedules right before break, the seniors were really pleasantly surprised with the pizza ingredients delivered straight to their door today. It was a really touching December gift for such a difficult year, especially since it's our last one at Ridge. It was really just a nice move that kind of united the whole grade because we all knew we were doing this together, even though we were all sort of separate. Additionally, last week, the entire school had a wonderful assembly from Dr. Fowlin. It was a really empathetic view into important issues, and the students felt he incorporated the current situation really well, even as he had to adapt his live show to a virtual format, as we are all very much familiar with now. And lastly, looking to the future, everyone I spoke to is a lot more hopeful for the spring and for new or returning opportunities, even as we buckle down to get through our current situation. Once again, thank you for having me.
Thank you, Juliet. Madam President, are you back online?
Yes, I apologize. I knocked myself off, I think. Thank you very much, Juliet. Do any of the board members have any questions for Juliet? I don't see any hands. Thank you for being here, Juliet. We appreciate your insights. Okay, so with that, we are moving on to our board presentation. So I'm going to hand it over to Mr. Markarian.
Thank you, Madam President. So first of all, I know we'll get to superintendent's report here in a little bit, but just welcome everyone. Thank you for being here tonight. Thank you for your patience and all that you have put into the school year so far. Really hoping that everybody is able to have a great holiday break and to celebrate their holidays safely with family. And I just wanted to put a special thank you out tonight to our administrative team who stepped up in the week before the holiday break here to help me get some data collected and to do some work that would allow us to share with you tonight an update on our return to instruction efforts. And also they put together our annually required report for our code of conduct and our school safety data report. I just wanted to thank each of our principals who summarized their code of conduct information, and also Mr. Syatt, who leads the district with the title of our anti-bullying coordinator for the district, and he was kind enough to collect some data relative to HIB in our school safety data report. So thank you, Mr. Syatt, for doing that. So moving into our report, I will share screen here as I do a little clicking and get this on for you all. Okay. And you should have now Code of Conduct and School Safety Data Report, December 21st, 2020. Hopefully everyone is seeing that. Someone give me a thumbs up. Thank you very much. Always hard to tell. Just getting resituated here. Okay, so our Code of Conduct and School Safety Data Report, December 21st, 2020, our responsibility is to report annually to the Board of Education statistics on Code of Conduct incidents from the prior school year. So we'll take a look at some of our metrics from the 1920 school year, which of course, as everyone is well aware, was cut short in terms of in-person instruction back in March. So we will notice the fact that we were not in school for a few months at the end of last school year in the spring, which also impacts our school safety data report, where we're also collecting metrics about incidents that occur in school. Obviously, we still would handle things that occurred on the virtual front, but I think that we did not see much, if any, of that going on, thankfully. So with that, we'll just take a quick look at this for our objectives. Provide a summary, as I mentioned, for the 1920 school year, not only in the Code of Conduct, but also with the school safety data statistics. And just to highlight what the school safety data statistics are all about, it's really about anti-bullying efforts and violence prevention efforts in our schools. So first, the 2019-2020 school year Code of Conduct data, organized first with our 4 elementary schools. The administration sifted through their reports over the course of the 1920 school year and categorized incidents that occurred in their buildings in several categories, each of which are highlighted in the left-hand column under behavior, and the subsequent columns to the right give you a sense of how many of each of these types of incidents the administration worked through during the last school year. Remember, this is for the 1920 school year. These are some of the responses that would typically occur when the administration was working through a Code of Conduct incident. At the middle school, the administration noted some suspensions and the cause of the suspensions, and summarized the consequence of detention for disruptive behavior or language, and gave some examples of the types of things that they're typically dealing with. Middle school responses to the incidents involving Code of Conduct violations. You'll notice the abbreviation SRO that is the school resource officer. The affirmative action officer is actually Mr. Syed, our assistant superintendent, and sometimes he assists with some of the consequences associated with infractions that occur in the district. High school incidents are quantified here on this slide. And here's an accounting of the different responses that the high school used to deal with code of conduct issues. Sorry, I realize I'm looking back and forth between two screens. Okay, school safety data reporting from January to June. So this would essentially represent the spring semester, the second semester of the 1920 school year. Fortunately, this is an area of very low incidence in our district when it comes to violence, vandalism, substance abuse, weapons issues, HIB over the years. I think we've gotten better and better at working with our students in that area as well. And again, this is just the second half of the school year, which, as I mentioned earlier, was obviously impacted by the fact that we were not in the schools from the middle of March until now, or until the end of last school year, rather. Annual totals, taking into account the full school years, comparing prior years, the last 4 years, with respect to each category that we report on in the school safety data report. So in the category of violence, you can see the historical number of incidents over time. The same with respect to vandalism at each of the schools and the total for the district. Substance abuse. Weapons offenses. Confirmed HIB investigations, meaning the investigation resulted in a finding that bullying occurred, harassment, intimidation, or bullying occurred. This represents the different trainings and programs that are offered to staff and students in each of the schools over the course of the 2019-2020 school year. Reporting period 1 is the fall portion of the school year, and reporting period 2 is in the spring. And in the far right are the totals for the course of the year. And that represents all of the data with respect to code of conduct violations, as well as our student safety data statistics for the 1920 school year. At this point, we'll pause if there's any questions for board members. Again, I want to thank Mr. Syed and our principals for being here. They may be able to help with any questions that you have, and certainly they'll be of assistance as we move on to the second portion of our presentation this evening. But again, if there's any questions at this time, board members do have any, I would ask our board president to recognize any members with a question.
Just bear with me because I'm looking to, oh, there we go. I didn't have everyone on the screen. I saw Mrs. McCune's hand.
Hi. Yeah, I was just curious with trainings and programs, what the Mount Prospect had a ton of, I think it was training. So I was wondering, was it that some schools are counting them as with a training for a group versus an individual, or why that number is so different?
Joanne, maybe you want to share a little bit about some of the training. Sure.
Absolutely. We, as you know, many of us, we were working with the positive discipline model. We were working with the College of St. Elizabeth's. And so we brought in a speaker through the generosity of our PTO, and she did direct training not only with the students, but with the staff and parents. So that was where we collectively put it there. And she did 2 sessions, both in the morning and the afternoon. And then she's worked with us not only in person, but then also with our executive committee of staff to just really get all of the components done for the positive discipline so that we can roll it out. We were going into our 3rd year, but unfortunately, obviously, with the virtual reality that we're living in, we have to continue that once we get back into person.
Thanks, Joanne.
Sure.
Other board member questions? Thank you, Ms. Hosny. I don't see any other board member questions, Nick, so I'll turn it back over to you.
Okay, great. Thank you. So our second piece this evening in terms of sharing report with the board and the public is related to our return to instruction efforts. So let me just switch to that presentation. Okay. And can I get a thumbs up? Are we seeing the, great, thank you. Okay, so for starters, what we wanted to talk about briefly was just a reminder about where we are in terms of our proposed amendments for November 23rd, 2020, which was our last Board of Education meeting. So I'll just give you a second to remind yourselves of where we left off. Take a look at that. Okay, so what we had talked about obviously were 2 amendments. One was for our elementary schools, K-1, 2, trying to bring students in every day. And we had proposed that we would try around the end of January to shift the bell schedules for the district back to traditional full day times. So those were the proposals. We also haven't forgotten about before and after care. And we are not forgetting about it. So that was captured as well as something that we were trying to think ahead to bring back. We certainly would be continuing our 100% virtual program for all grades. And in the long run, obviously, we would like to get all of our students who want to be in person able to come to school in person for the full school day. So one of the challenges, of course, is timing. Many folks since that presentation back on November 23rd have kind of asked about the question, are we going to be able to do any of these amendments? How quickly can we do these amendments? You've talked about the beginning of the 2nd semester as a possible time frame. And that was definitely the case at the November Board of Education meeting, that I felt as though we might be able to do some of these amendments timed logically with a break between marking periods, which would be between the 2nd and 3rd marking period, or our semester break. Certainly, we are very in tune to the health situation around the state, and we are in tune with the statistics that we have been monitoring, obviously, on a daily basis. So we want to make sure that people understand that we're constantly trying to respond to an ever-changing situation. And so as soon as possible doesn't mean that possible is right now. And we may have to wait until we feel like we're in a safe enough place. And by that, we're safe in terms of all of the implementation strategies and everything that we need in order to make change happen. And also in consultation with our health officials, our district physician, just to make sure that before we actually implement any of these plan amendments, that we feel like the timing is right. And I know that's a difficult question for people to process in terms of, can you be more specific? Unfortunately, I really can't be more specific at this time. When we're ready, and that isn't right this moment. And I certainly hope that as we go forward and we watch how data is trending, that we might get to a better place. Some folks have questioned the state's metric. Those of you that have been paying careful attention to the New Jersey Department of Education and the Department of Health, they're using a metric that's a color coding system. As you're probably aware, we've been in orange for quite a while, and the next state, which would be worse, would be if we moved into the red color, where the guidance essentially would be to move to a completely remote instruction format. So certainly we don't want to move in that direction. As I said, we've been in the orange for quite a while, and we were in yellow at the very beginning of the school year. So obviously we'd like to move back from orange back to yellow, and eventually from yellow to green. And so some folks have asked me about that. They said, well, maybe we could use the color coding system as a metric in terms of, when it might be reasonable to try to make these amendments happen, because both of them obviously do involve bringing more students into school, or bringing students into school for a longer period of time and having to manage things like lunch. So certainly I recognize that that system offers a perspective, the color coding system, but it's not necessarily the only perspective. And there's a very wide range, as we have seen, in terms of the metrics and the health statistics, even within those different colors. So I do think it does provide a certain perspective, but it may not be the end all and be all in terms of making any of these amendments happen. So I've been keeping an eye on our daily new cases, just as a perspective. And interestingly, today's number, if I'm not mistaken, was 3,000 and change. If you have been watching the state's metrics on daily new cases, I think I saw today 3,186. Just refreshing to make sure. Daily cases today. Yeah, 3,186. So, obviously we see big swings in terms of the number of cases. November 23rd, 3,592 cases. December 12th, 6,247 cases. And I meant to type in the number. Today was 3,186 cases. So we see a lot of variation over time. But if you're taking a look at the data posted by the Department of Health, you do see a chart, a bar chart, which shows you your daily cases over a course of time. And we are obviously working our way through a spike, if you will, in terms of the high number of cases of COVID-19. So we're still working our way through that. And I know there's a lot of concern about everyone traveling and intermingling quite a bit over the course of the holiday season here in the next week or two, and what that may do with respect to the number of cases and or transmission that we have around the state. So obviously that's something that we want to monitor, and that's something that we want to take into consideration as we make decisions about when to take a step forward in implementing either of the amendments that we've been talking about. Just some perspective, The state does share with us a couple of pieces of information. One of them is a report that's published, it seems about 2 or 3 times a week, where they share this company that they're using to do projections going forward in terms of confirmed positive cases. So they are still projecting forward that we are going to be increasing, which doesn't come as a surprise based on what we've been seeing of late. This is back on December 9th, 2020. The governor did a presentation in one of his daily briefings, and this just shares that information that you may or may not have seen, talking about 2 different predictive models. One was done by the Department of Health and one was done by the Office of Innovation. And it just gives you a sense of what they're seeing as a worst case scenario in terms of peaks, if you will, in new cases and hospitalizations and so on. And then as they shared in this presentation on the 9th, they did a worst case scenario and they also did a moderate case scenario. And in both of these cases, you start to see these peaks that appear to be somewhere in the month of January 2021. So that's kind of what we're watching for when we think about timing and we think about bringing more people together inside of our school buildings. This does provide a frame of reference as to when that timing might be most appropriate. I don't know what to say except that we last met at the end of November, and the numbers have unfortunately not been good in the interim. So we see these peaks that are coming out, in that January to end of February, to the end of January, beginning of February timeframe, which was when I was kind of hoping we might be able to take a step forward. And based on these models, I'm not so sure that that's going to be the best timing. It may need to be later than that. So I was just basically summarizing from what we've seen with our historical experience around the holidays. What we saw after Thanksgiving was an uptick, and the predictive models that we just took a quick look at kind of suggest where we might be going forward in terms of our highest number of cases. And it's probably not the most prudent time to make a change at that peak. So we want to monitor when we start to see conditions improve. The other issue that we have to keep a close eye on is the high levels of cases and what that does to us in challenging our ability to staff our schools in a way that is meaningful for that in-person type of contact that we want to have between the teachers and the students. It's a problem that many folks have already observed, that students are often coming to class only to find that the teacher that they would have liked to see in person is unable to be there in person and is in fact working remotely. We were at the precipice of having a major problem with that particular issue several days after the Thanksgiving holiday. So that's kind of going back to my first point there with respect to the historical experience that we had, was that immediately following the holiday, we seemed to get the surge that created a lot of difficulty with staff. And oftentimes it wasn't even a case where a staff member was sick, but they might have been exposed to someone and therefore had to quarantine. So we would lose staff members that way as well. So that's going to remain a challenge, I think, for us in the coming weeks as we get through the next holiday, given our historical experience on the last holiday and the predictive models that we just looked at. As I mentioned there in my last point, we had been looking at late January, which was when the semester timing seemed like a reasonable opportunity, just based on our instructional calendar. And that would be great if that could happen. We have to kind of see how things trend, but it may be February or later. And that's kind of looking again at what we see being forecast by some of the statistical representations we looked at earlier. And we won't know until some time passes. And I think that's just the honest truth of where we are in terms of timing and when we might feel safe implementing either of the amendments that we're taking a look at. So I've been asked this question a few times in the last few weeks, you know, if we're seeing these trends going up, why is it that, you know, we're talking about this? You know, Nick, why are you bringing it up? It's challenging enough as it is on a day-to-day basis. And I am acutely aware of that because I live it every day. I see it every day, and people are reminding me of it every day. So I certainly appreciate the challenge that we have been experiencing and what we're going through. But at the same time, if we are going to be able to take any steps forward in trying to do some more in-person instruction for our students, you know, we have to take some time to plan. And while we are patient, and I think patience is good, while we are patiently waiting for the opportune time to make an adjustment to meet that goal of spending more time in school and having more time for instruction and hopefully having more time for in-person instruction, we have to plan. And that's the reason that we're talking about it now. We need to plan, we need to collaborate with staff, we need to get people's input and feedback about what's the best way to do this, what are the obstacles that we need to overcome in order to make these things happen. What do we need to be able to do with transportation? Are we going to have bus drivers available to make those shifts? What do we need to do with food service? How are we going to handle lunches? And, you know, we also want to take a look at any necessary supplies. And as an example, for our elementary school initiative, where we'd like to bring in those K-1-2 students daily, that's going to put more students in classrooms. So we've ordered another round of trifold barriers, if you will, that the students can have on the tables or desks to give them a little bit more of a buffer between adjacent students. So we did order more of those. I anticipate we'll probably see them coming in soon, soon meaning less than 30 days from now. So, you know, that's just an example of the kind of thing that we would want to try to procure and have in place as we try to prepare to take that next step. And those things have to be ordered, and you have to think ahead to the necessary supplies that you might need. We've also talked a lot about technology as a supply, and with the support of our Board of Education, we've been working hard in that front to procure some additional Chromebooks. Our Director of Technology has been instrumental with his staff, trying to help us not only with things like Chromebooks, but other supplies that sometimes are scarce and difficult to get, because as we've talked about over the last several months, there are things that lots of folks would like to have to try to make the virtual instruction more doable. And so we're competing with many other folks for things like microphones. So we're happy to have gotten some of those today, recently rather, and we have more coming. So we're making progress, and every time we get something that has been an outstanding order, it helps us do our job a little bit better. But I appreciate that things aren't looking great for this immediate holiday season, and the forecasting that we took a look at suggests that maybe we need to pause for a while longer yet, which is fine. I'm a very patient person, but I do think that we need to make good use of the time that we have before trying to take the next step by planning in the interim. So that's the reason why we're talking about this now. So obviously, one of the big initiatives has been based on our elementary schools, in particular our kindergarten, first and second grade students, and trying to create opportunities for those that are looking to come into school, have in-person instruction. We really feel as though we've got some early literacy being developed with these students, and if we could get them in on a daily basis instead of what amounts to an every other day type of schedule, it would be beneficial for our students. And so in the spirit of collaborating on these plans and trying to figure out how, if, when, and all the variables that go along with it. That can't be done without working with your elementary school principals. So that's the reason why they are here tonight, so that they can help share some perspective about what they're seeing. And they've been doing a lot of work. Again, I thank them for being here with us tonight. And I just want to share some of the work that they've put together and collected, and also give them the opportunity to just speak and share a little bit about what they see as some of the challenges coming up in trying to make this happen at some point in the future. So first, they were good enough to work through the surveys that the parents completed in terms of being given this opportunity. If we are able to have in-person instruction on a daily basis, even on the same schedule that we have now from 8:45 to 1 o'clock, would you like to try to achieve that, or would you prefer to have your child be virtual? And so these numbers are just a reflection of the parents' responses to that question, which we posed to them, really asking for their commitment so that we could plan. Obviously the principals, if they're going to plan a shift, they really need to have a solid understanding of what parent selections are relative to in-person instruction or the virtual. And you can see how this breaks down at each of the schools across each of the 3 grade levels that we were attempting to see if we could get the daily in-person going. So having the course requests, if you will, the instructional requests in hand, then they're able to take a look at staffing and sectioning, which at the elementary level kind of goes hand in hand, right? Each homeroom section represents an instructional staff member, right? And maybe somebody wants to jump in. I believe that the red indicates where they're looking to increase staff in order to make the daily in-person programs work going forward, right? So thank you. Thanks, Joanne. I appreciate that you guys did a nice job with the color coding. How
Dr. Oliver.
Yeah, Dr. Oliver knows that I'm a very visual person. I need all the color coding cues I can get. So thank you, Dr. Oliver. So yeah, just trying to give you a sense of where we would like to try to add staff in order to keep the class size down, because in this effort, we're talking about trying to limit class size to what I said was approximately 15 or less students in a class, depending on where that class is housed. You might be able to have even a full-size class of 20 students if you had a large enough room and you could spread the students out, because really we're looking to strive for social distancing as we try to do this. So thank you all very much for working on this and working on your sectioning and anticipated increases. As I just mentioned, the principals were good enough to also think about, where they might have opportunities for those in-person classes to be potentially a little bit bigger, and to look at, where there's flexibility, right? So for example, at Cedar Hill, when you talk about, taking a first grade class and moving that class to a music room and or the media center, right? That might allow you then to have a large enough space where you don't need 2 smaller spaces, which involves 2 teachers, and you can manage with 1 larger space and need 1 fewer teacher. So where you see, adding sections, that's where you're talking about adding staff, right? And the alternative is to try to find a big enough room where you wouldn't need to do that and still have plenty of space, breathing room, if you will, between the students. So that's what this slide is designed to give you a sense of. This ties back to the color coding of where additional staff would be needed for in-person instruction if we were to maintain some smaller classes for the students. And assuming we were implementing those staff, this gives you a sense of the kinds of class sizes that we're looking at, right? So, you know, if existing classes are, in-person classes are, you know, in the 8 to 12 range, obviously taking this step and trying to bring more students in for in-person instruction is going to increase class size above what we're typically seeing now. So, you know, in terms of that social distancing and spacing, the focus here is on the daily in-person estimated class sizes, right? So you can see that we're ranging somewhere between 12 and all the way up to 16 in one section at Liberty Corner, but basically 12, 13, 14, 15, or 16 students per room. And that's, of course, you know, where we take pause and where we sit there and say, okay, now exactly how crowded is that going to be? You know, are we really going to be able to achieve that 6 feet of space? And where we're not, because we know that that's not always going to be possible, can we implement these barriers? And at what point, when we look at that overall impact and the current health conditions that we see around us, you know, at what point do we feel safe in taking a step forward? And that may be a little while yet, but again, the planning is key. Without the planning, you can't take steps forward. So this gives you a sense of what it may look like, assuming we're able to get the staff, which, you know, going back up to this slide for a moment, I think is a key consideration. You know, Mr. Syed, I got on my view shown here, switch here so I can see his face, because when I speak about Mr. Syed, I want to see his face, right? So Mr. Syed, he is the man that's been standing on his head. I know that he looks like he's got his head up and his feet down, but it's really the other way around. He's been standing on his head down, feet at the ceiling, keeping staff moving and really coordinating with the principals and our school nurses to you know, somehow manage between substitutes and creative groupings to keep everything going. But one of the other things that he's been working hard to do, besides, you know, keep the existing cohort of staff going, is I've been asking him to see if he can find more teachers. And you know, at that point, I think it's not like head over heels. It's just like hovering. Man is floating around in space, asking me, what am I kidding? It's really, really difficult right now to try to find staff. And you know, we want to find good staff. We don't want to take steps forward and just put a body in a room, right? Because we don't want people to have a bad experience. We want them to have a good experience with well-qualified people. And our administrators work with Mr. Syed to select good teachers, and that's what we want for our kids. So that's one of our big challenges here when we look at this, and you know, we say we'd like to find, you know, something like 7 elementary school teachers in the middle of the year. It's a tall order, which is not to be unhopeful, and we're always hopeful. And we want to try to target this group of students, but it's very difficult right now when many school districts are looking to try to do similar things and competing for obviously a finite resource in the available number of elementary school teachers. So that is a reality that we're confronted with, and one that you don't see here is what's going on in maintaining existing positions. And by that, I simply mean somebody that becomes unavailable for illness, or perhaps somebody that's having a baby, someone's going out on some type of leave, and all of those leaves compete for these same positions, right? Here we are looking for 7 people, but if 5 leave positions need to be filled, those are going to get filled before these 7. You know, we got to maintain what we have before we can grow. And all the principals know this as well, right? I mean, they love to be able to do more, but if they have one teacher that they are pleased with and willing to hire, and they have a vacancy for an existing position for a leave, obviously that's where they're going to want to put that teacher first, right? So that's it's sort of a not so well advertised and known challenge that the principals and Mr. Syed and all of us are working through to keep existing classrooms staffed. And I know parents parents are aware, right? They experience it. Sometimes there's a teacher change in the middle of the year. Why is there a teacher change? Well, so-and-so is on a leave for this, that, or the other thing. And sometimes that happens. It's part of the work that we do. So here's where the principals can jump in at will. I asked them, I said, well, what do you guys see as your challenges? And they brainstormed a little bit. I know that we've touched on some of these things already in the conversation, but I know that they've been thinking about this a lot. They've been talking to their staff about this. They've been thinking about the timing. And so I asked them to work on, really, I have to thank them. They put together everything that I've shared with you so far. And here are some of the challenges they came up with as well. And so I'll leave it here. If any of you guys want to jump in, again, thank you guys for the work that you did to put this together, and just for the brainstorming that you've done. And certainly, please take the opportunity to chime in here with anything else.
Mr. Marcari, we would be happy to do that. Dr. Oliver and I will talk about this plan, Amendment 1, and then Mrs. Foley and Mr. Sampolo will be talking about the Amendment number 2, where it's a full day. I just want to kind of go back and reference some of your other slides in that one of the other considerations was we could, if you look at all the kindergarten, that is an area where we do not need any staff. So we were also thinking about starting slow and just bringing kindergarten in back 5 days a week. And of course, K and 1 are the ones that we truly, as principals, I hope we would all agree, is that we feel that they need the most intervention and the most skill-based instruction. So that's a good thing. So I just wanted to point that out. Also, in addition, before we kind of talk about some of the next steps for planning and challenges, is just to kind of give an idea of what it would look like for those students who are blended coming in. So obviously we would have them coming in 5 days a week. We would have, as you talked about, the difference in classes, the difference in what it would look like 15 feet away. But then also their schedule would be changing a little bit in terms of their afternoon. We wouldn't have those afternoon check-ins by cohort. We'd have more of a very intentional, deliberate staging of small one-on-one, small group or one-on-one differentiated instruction based upon the skill acquisition. So the teachers would make those groups up and they would obviously let the parents know at least a week in advance, but you can then start to differentiate based upon skill level as opposed to the cohort level, which I think is a really added benefit. The students would still have their extra special in the afternoon, as they still do. Supplemental services such as instructional support, quest, speech, they would also continue in the afternoon. Science and social studies would still be expected to be completed in the afternoon. And then other Seesaw and Google Classroom activities as assigned by the teacher would be traditionally done in the afternoon. So I just wanted to kind of give that, if we were moving forward, even though it's 5 days a week, we'd still have similar types of approaches in our instruction. So just thinking about, and Dr. Oliver, you chime in as I'll do the first couple. Obviously the increased number of students in space, which Mr. McCarran, you really addressed. Each school would be a little bit different. I know, just speaking for Mount Prospect School, we have, we have a good chunk of students who are virtual. So we do have empty classrooms. So we really wouldn't have to go into our large areas. We would have additional space where we can go into different classrooms. The ability to find quality staff, as always, we would be looking at hiring staff, but we would be looking collectively as a group of 4 principals. So that would be interesting to see. We'd be interviewing and looking at all the staff members to see how we could do that. It also might mean being creative with the current staff that we have. We might, in terms of my survey, we had 5 parents who wanted to come in, but we had 5 parents that decided they might want to go virtual. So it'd almost be a wash. So I might be able to kind of tweak some of the staff that I have, and one teacher that might be virtual may be able to come in person. So there are some different ways that we're able to kind of manipulate our own staff. The classroom assignments, I know we keep saying this, but this is very true, that there could mean that your child may have a different teacher if we need to change. So it may be a teacher that is known to the school. It might be a new teacher. It might be a teacher in another school. So we really have to think kind of globally and as a district, not only as our school-based area. It might be a larger change where it's impacting some of the entire grade level, or it might be just 1 or 2 individual situations.
You know, Mrs. Ozening, can I just
Go
jump
ahead.
in there?
Please.
Just so it's at least said, you know, in this public setting, if we do wind up needing to make class placement changes, it's going to be following the same
Yes.
procedures that we do making classes in August. So that will be balancing classes, looking at individual ability level, individual needs, and working with the current, let's say, first grade or second grade, working with those teachers to then make another balanced class. And that's if we can hire additional staff members. But that is something that, you know, parents do, that is a concern. I mean, we all understand, those of us who are elementary teachers or just parents in general, that children and parents get very attached to their child's teacher. So we'll work to be creative to not lose that sense of community. It is something that we constantly are talking about.
Yeah.
And then just, you know, the difference of just the two different schools, Mount Prospect and Liberty Corner, you know, Liberty Corner does not have as many open rooms. So if we are not able to hire, let's say a third grade or first grade class that I have has about 23 children in it, 24 children in it. If I was not able to hire a staff member, then that class would need to be in, let's say, the music room.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a challenge. It's something working through what that classroom will look like, working with those teachers. So that's a lot of children in a room in a given normal or typical school year. So every classroom in all of the 4 buildings have been measured. We know exactly the square footage and how many desks we can get in there. I'm sure the other schools have a list of the rooms, and we're constantly crunching those numbers. So, but those are just 2 points. Sorry, I just wanted to put in there.
Yeah, no, and I just want to point out, like Mr. Markarian said, though, that we all 4 principals are working very collaboratively, and we're ensuring that what happens in one school is very similar to what happens in the other school, to just ensure that there is consistency and continuity among all 4 of the schools. Going back, and I know Mr. Markarian mentioned this, but again, we really want to make sure that we continue to maintain the 6-foot distance and all the CDC guidelines, and through the acquisition of different barriers and relevant materials. Also looking at possible schedule changes that may be needed for any kind of special area or afternoon schedule blocks. You know, if we maintain up to the 1 o'clock dismissal time, the afternoon should pretty much remain the same. But there may be some tweaks, and also if we have to add sections, there might be some tweaks to the special area schedule. The district technology committee has been meeting. We're looking not only at the current needs, the emergency response needs, if you will, and what we're doing and what we have been doing since the spring, but we're also looking long-term. So all the things that we are acquiring, how are we going to be utilizing that long-term? We don't want to just, we've spent so much time in teaching children and teaching staff and how to use the Seesaw platform, for example. We want to make sure that we are going to continue that in some form or another, and all the different types of hardware and software. So we really want to make sure that we're deliberate in our purchases and in the things that we're continuing to maintain, and to make sure that it's instructionally sound. There are some things that we've tried and that we've like, okay, you know, it wasn't as feasible as we thought, or some things have really gone above and beyond our expectations. So those are things that we're continually really talking with the teachers. We're so fortunate to have those weekly teacher planning across the district, because that's where we get a lot of the feedback and what's working, what isn't working, and how can we across the district really maintain that continuity and that instruction for all the students together. So that's, go ahead. Go ahead, Dr. Oliver.
I keep freezing, I'm sorry. One challenge that has come up the last few weeks that we've been really trying to figure out here is what to do if we go to school, these dismissal at 1 o'clock, and we're in 5 days a week. What happens then to a child who needs to be quarantined? So they are not going to be coming to school those 5 days a week. What do we do with them? Do they become then virtual students and have to transition to the virtual only teacher? Do we need to put in additional requirements for the teachers in the classrooms to be simulcasting, streaming from their classroom for those children who are at home? And that then goes back to some of the technology, questions and concerns that we have. So that is a concern I know many of my teachers have spoken to me about. And as an admin group, we've been talking about that and trying to make sure that we have a plan in place for when a child is not going to be in school, because the model is going to be changing. This last note, probably Mrs. Fox put this on here just to remind, so we can get this out to parents. Obviously, we are closed, or we're not closed, we're virtual for the week after winter break. So we're going to follow, it's not going to be much of a change for you. We're going to be following the schedule, just like election day. When we were 100% virtual on election day, the teachers are going to be updating their schedules, their weekly schedules, so your children know exactly what is expected of them. They're going to be teaching mini lessons, reading, writing, and math to the children, and then they're going to be able to do some small group instruction. The teachers are going to be putting out those schedules, and we've been asked to put out a reminder in our Friday blast this week. So just so you know, it is going to be just like the most recent 100% virtual day, which was election day, and very similar to how it was in September, where the children are going to be virtual with the teacher teaching those mini lessons.
Well, thank you both very much. And we'll get an opportunity for board members to ask questions here in a minute. Okay, so moving into the second amendment and getting some feedback on this topic really obviously involves the entire district. So again, Dr. Lazovic, Mrs. Hudak were able to be here this evening as well. And just to kind of brainstorm, what are the challenges that they are having as they think through this possibility of trying to move all of the students back to traditional bell schedules in terms of the school day, right? So, you know, instead of the elementary school going from 8:45 to 1, they would do their 8:45 to 3:15. The middle and the high school go 7:30, 2:30. You know, they are looking at this with the understanding that the idea was to allow the students to have a full day of instruction still on their cohorts. So while we would perhaps have kindergarten and or first and or second grade uncohorted, if you will, we realize that even that is an aggressive goal. It's not going to be possible district-wide, but perhaps with the balance of the district, we could take the step of trying to get back to being in the school building for a full day just on cohorts, right? So you'd still come on your A day or your B day, but instead of leaving school early and having some afternoon activity from home, you would stay at school for the day. And as we mentioned back in our November meeting, one of the big challenges there is having students all day means coordinating an opportunity and a way for them to be able to eat in school, which obviously we know in order to eat, you're going to have to move your mask to be able to eat. So that's certainly one simple or one simply explained problem and challenge, not necessarily simple in its solution. So I've been asking the principals to think through these things. And I know that Dr. Lazovic and Mrs. Hudak kind of collaborated and we're willing to share a little bit about what they're thinking through with respect to the middle school and the high school. So I'm sure you'd be happy to hear from them instead of me for a few minutes.
Thanks, Mr. Markarian. I'm going to kick it off. So before we really get into the big pieces of change, we did want to take a second to say thank you to the community, to the families and the students who have been absolutely wonderful. I personally want to thank the administrative staff coming in new, specifically, obviously working with central office, but working and partnering with Mrs. Hudak. I could not have asked for a better partner coming into the district, so I do want to say thank you. It's been an interesting 6 months, Mr. Markarian. You know, last and certainly by no means least, but certainly our central piece is we want to thank the staff. So as we talk through this, one of the central pieces we want to highlight is our constant work and communication with them. Because it's important that we hear from them as to what's working and how we can transition back to more in-person instruction. So, Ms. Hudak.
Yeah. So Dr. Lazovic and I spoke, and I think Mr. Markarian, as well as the other administrators here this evening, have all expressed that, you know, one of the trends, it's the big factor are the trends and where they're going. The health and safety of our students always at the forefront of any decisions that we're making to bring more students back to in-person. And so as we tend to follow the trends daily and in the weeks ahead, I think that's going to be the key in making a decision when we're able to implement this plan. For the middle and high school, you know, we have obviously larger numbers of students who are going to be in our buildings. We have, at the middle school specifically, you know, we are managing class sizes right now already, in some cases of 15 or 16 students, where our 6 feet is 4.5 feet on some days. And so the number of the students who are coming back to in-person learning will be a huge factor in the way that we proceed.
Following up with that, as I mentioned, we're constantly having discussions with staff and moving about the building. We've asked for their feedback in multiple surveys. And specifically, what we've heard from the staff is while they're doing a Herculean effort, and the students are as well, to try and make sure that we're where we need to be and students are mastering our curricula. At the same time, not only is it a strenuous effort on both sides, but there are certain things that are being lost that we would be able to gain back if we can find a way to bring students back in for longer periods of in-person instruction. However, there are numerous challenges with that.
So when you look at the high school and the middle school, we do have to kind of work in lockstep in some regards because of the staffing that we share across our two buildings. And so the decisions that we have to make have to somewhat be similar so that the staff who are going from the middle to the high school and vice versa have the opportunities that they need to, you know, transit and prepare for their students, and we're not stepping over each other's toes and scheduling classes at the same time. In our surveys and in the data that we've gathered from our staff at this point, we are both recommending that we move back to our 9-period day when we go to increase in person. Of course, this is by cohort. This allows us to be able to maintain some of our normalcy in a schedule that is familiar while proceeding forward with bringing more students into our buildings. And of course, as Dr. Lazovic will begin, there are challenges, as many of you know, that go back to that decision that we have to consider.
Just speaking to the highest level, easiest to point out, as Ms. Hudak mentioned before, not knowing what the exact numbers are going to be makes it difficult to truly understand what the building is going to feel like and how to keep everyone safe while we're moving through a longer day. Obviously, the hope is that as we offer more in-person instruction, more students come back. Since September, speaking just for the high school, our numbers of requested 100% virtual students has more than doubled. And so it's difficult to truly understand how the building will operate as we get more and more students in and still have to maintain those social distancing requirements to help keep people safe. The other piece that Mr. Markarian mentioned before is food service. And obviously that is a question, how we can do that safely, because there's no intent on bringing folks back for a full instructional day without some way of making sure that they can eat at some point in the day.
Right now at the middle school, we do have opportunities for students to have snack, but that's in a small incremental, very highly structured time period. That's no more than 6 to 7 minutes during the same time. For the middle school and the high school, we have staff members who are actually overseeing lunch. We do not have aides like the elementary schools. And so considering the challenges that we're having with staffing, and I can tell you that middle school is certainly struggling with that, as well as finding substitutes, how the supervision of that structured lunchtime goes, along with the increased time for students to be unmasked, as Mr. Markarian had alluded to earlier, is definitely a big concern, while keeping students socially distant and safe. The tutorials and advisory that the high school and middle school have right now built into our schedules will be obsolete. The Zoomers right now have the opportunity, as do the in-person students, to meet with their teachers in the afternoons for differentiated lessons of instruction, small mini reviews for those students who need it. And teachers are also inviting specific groups of students, pulling them back in when they haven't mastered a concept during instruction. And those opportunities will have to be built back in toward the day and not be separated as they currently are right now.
And the last piece specific to the high school is that a huge amount of work had been done by the district over a great number of years as far as how to potentially change the master schedule to better benefit the students, their learning, their social emotional well-being, as well as the staff members. And a decision had been made prior to the year and to COVID impacting us the way it has, to move to a rotate and drop schedule. We were always going to move from a 9-period day to rotate and drop, and so a return to our traditional schedule, among the many other benefits, gives somewhat of a return to the normalcy that people knew before COVID and allows us to practice and prepare for September. But the high school is still moving forward energetically with our leadership team and touching base with the larger staff. We have a schedule for the next 9 months to make sure that the staff is prepared, students are prepared, families are prepared, that we've worked with the larger district, and that stay connected to the middle school, and that as we move forward with this change in schedule, it is seen as something that helps us. We immediately recognize the benefits that were found and why the decision was made in the first place. And so that work is continuing as we consider, as Mr. Markarian has pointed out, a return to longer days of in-person instruction. And so that is a big piece of our work.
And lastly, of course, the high school and middle school will be keeping our current schedule as we go through virtual instruction through January 4th through 8th. You should be receiving more specific information in this week's Friday folder, but we will maintain our current schedule with the students. You know, those depending on cohort will all be Zooming in from home. Thank you all.
Thanks, guys. Okay, so similar topic. What happens at the elementary school if we try to transition at some point in the future back to the full day from 8:45 to 3:15? And again, our admins have been working on this and came up with some items, some of which are similar to the challenges that they have even in the K-1-2 project. But how do you guys see this playing out at the elementary level in terms of trying to move to full days? I think you guys were.
Got it.
There it is. Unmute.
I got it. Yeah, I'm good at that now. So as Mr. Lazovic said, coming in as a new administrator in the middle of this sort of process has been quite interesting. And I think you should recognize that the work that was done before I got here and in the summer and since then yielded us a really brilliant plan. I can't tell you the amount of times the A-B cohorting that we chose and the half-day schedule that has really yielded very good instruction. And I think a lot of our families are very pleased with what's happening. Certainly, they were very surprised compared to what they thought might happen based on when everyone first closed. But those A-B cohorts saved us so many times in quarantining. So you should have faith that this same team planning this kind of work moving forward is doing that same kind of care and consideration. So I just wanted to give that shout out to everybody before I started. When you think about elementary school considerations, I'm going to let the ability to find quality staff kind of, Mr. Sampola is going to do the bottom part of this. And that fits into the idea of what we actually have to cover in our model. That's a little bit different than the middle and high school. I know he can explain that. The middle couple 3 bullets there after that sort of talk about the idea that the timing of this decision and how safe we feel, and if the CDC starts to give us a break or we feel that we can have a little more leeway in the 6 feet, will make a difference in how we plan lunch in elementary. Because if you know, different than a middle and high school, when a student chooses where they're going to eat their lunch, they pretty much stay there. If you're in elementary school, think of like herding cats, right? So it's a lot harder for us to guarantee and supervise that if we let students have recess or a little bit of freedom, that we can keep them safe under very strict 6 feet guidelines. So it looks a little more like a lockdown lunch where you stay in your classroom and you have lunch and recess in the same place, which, you know, the reason for doing it is for increased instruction and increased socialization. So that part isn't quite the bargain we would hope for in getting this plan back. The acquisition of barriers will help us in times when staffing is a challenge and we may need to move students into a bigger space to supervise a few groups at a time. Then using the cafeteria with barriers and spread out could help us there as well. If you bring students back full-time in elementary, Joanne and Jim spoke about this a little bit, that afternoon piece is going to look different if you're not able to check in with the cohort that's home. So we need to move forward, and I think this comes up a little later with Mr. Sampola, the idea of increasing our live streaming skills to compensate for that little loss of contact time that might experience when we shift to this is also something that we're planning for. I think that when we think about what we're gaining in this, you know, you are losing a lunch period, you're gaining an opportunity for social studies and science live in-person instruction, which will be a nice added benefit. That's a great thing we're looking forward to. And I think, again, it's about timing and risk reward, being able to say that we feel safe enough to do this well and continue to do the great work. The staff is incredible and is making magic happen literally every day. So I'm going to let Mr. Sampola finish the rest of where we are with this plan.
Thank you, Holly, and happy holidays, everyone. So as we were talking among the four of us, each building, because of its individuality, because of the layout of the building, the staffing, the materials in the building, we would have some special considerations to consider. Holly's mentioned some of these, Jim and Joanne have mentioned them as well, and really some of them are repeats even of the middle and the high school. Right now, most of our students during the day, once they get to their classrooms, they're in their classrooms for the most part until they come home. The exceptions of that are phys ed and their mask break or opportunities where they will go outside for a little bit to take their mask off, get some fresh air outside. When it was warmer, they were doing their snacks outside as well. But otherwise, the students are for the most part in the classroom. Once you extend to a full day, then a lot of other things are happening, including the resumption of lunch and possibly recess. So if you're going to have more people in the hallways, then there's more need for supervision in the hallways as well. And a lot of this is a trickle down. Right now, depending on the building, we have more staff members in some buildings working remotely than other buildings. So there may be less staff available for supervising in the hallways, in the stairwells, in the entrance and the exits. And similar to the middle and high school, we do supervise all those areas very much with our little kiddos in each of those areas. We also would have an increased hallway and restroom traffic. We have increased mask breaks during the day. So those would all be areas where we would need to monitor and maintain social distancing. And so the need for supervision in those areas is something that we need to consider depending on our particular building makeup. Holly had mentioned the need for technology. We talked about that with students being there the whole day and still wanting to reduce the amount of actual touching and handling of papers. We discussed the need for students working in school all to have access to a Chromebook or a device of some sort. And so when you're looking at that versus the students who are virtual, there may be some juggling we need to do in terms of technology. And I know the technology committee is meeting to discuss and work out some of that. As I said, a lot of our scheduling for a full day would surround the resumption of lunch and recess and our special area staff. Now, right now, the elementary schools have been doing our specials remotely, meaning that the students are in class and our special area teachers are Zooming in. The reason we did this was for safety. We're trying to reduce the amount of people coming in contact with each other throughout the school day. And so we made the decision to keep the special area teachers remote. Therefore, because they're not in the room and the teachers are out of the room, our lunch leaders, our lunch aides have been filling in as the adult in the room, monitoring students while the special area teachers are teaching. And therefore, they've been doing that. They've been in the hallways, monitoring hallway traffic, restroom traffic. So their job has become that from instead of being the people in the lunchroom. Now, if of course we need them back in the lunchroom, then that creates a whole nother issue of we still need all that monitoring going on if we're going to have our special area teachers still Zoom in to the classrooms in order to reduce the amount of people. But we would also need to have lunch aides who can monitor lunch and recess. We talked a little bit about where we would serve lunch. Would it be in the cafeteria? Would it be in the classroom? We would be leaning more toward the classrooms, but again, that creates issues in terms of using those same areas for cleaning before and after lunch, getting students ready for recess, keeping them socially distanced on the playground if we're doing recess as well, and if we're not, what are we doing instead? And basically making sure that supervision for these increased times are taken into account. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Simpola. Thank you, Mrs. Foley. Appreciate that very much. So, you know, I do want to recognize that there's a lot of questions, right? And the administration, I think, has been making a lot of progress, but it's not complete yet, which, you know, does play into the timing factor as well. We want to feel prepared and we want to feel safe in making these adjustments. So that is why I kind of circle back to, you know, the beginning of the conversation in terms of timing, right? The other piece of this that I think is very relevant for all of us, especially as we think about the dynamics of the high school and the middle school, as Dr. Lazovic pointed out, he's seen over time the number of virtual students more than doubling since this began in the fall. So when we think about that, we want to think about making school a place where kids want to be, not where they're choosing to be virtual. And so that plays into this as well. We want school to be a place that people want to go. And what can we do to make that a reality? And can we achieve a situation where we make the school day longer, even in the cohort model, and kids want to come to school because somehow things are different? And are they different because there's more of their favorite teachers in the building? Are they different because they're able to interact with their peers and their friends? Is it different because they can break bread together at lunch and have a conversation and be friendly and take a mask off and feel like they're interacting in a social way that that's important for them as part of the school day? You know, they get to class and they're not the only student there, right? They have peers that are in the classroom, right? So the kinds of things that, you know, make school fun for kids, can we cross some of those hurdles in a way that if and when we're making the school day back to that full bell schedule, that the students want to come? We don't want to create a situation where students want to come even less and have more students going to virtual. So that's another part of our thinking, which I think maybe coming into play a little bit more 612 than K5, but it is another variable that, you know, it's difficult to necessarily quantify that, but it's a tough nugget to crack, to change the environment when the rules that you're having to work within are not necessarily allowing for that to happen right now at this time. So that is a consideration that we're looking at also, so that if we do move to something, we don't create a situation where fewer kids even want to come to school. So that's important for us as well. We want school to be a positive place for the students where they feel a desire to go. And you know, it's a difficult challenge that you know, we're all faced with in education right now. But with that said, this was the last slide. So I would thank our administrators again for the work that they did in helping not only pull this presentation together, but also our code of conduct and school safety data report. So thank you again for your work in that. And if board members have any questions from this presentation, I'm sure our team would be happy to try to answer them for you.
Board members, does anyone have any questions? I see Mr. Salmon's hand.
Thanks. Thanks for putting this together. It's really helpful to understand kind of what the constraints are on moving this forward. I guess first, just Nick, preliminarily, has this plan been submitted to the county?
Not, I've talked to the county superintendent about it. There's not a written document yet, because basically I did speak to him about it, and he just said, send me the schedule changes. There aren't really any schedule changes until we get to the point where we want to go for a full day, because I explained to him that the cohort change in terms of the number of students coming to school in that situation is not going to be any different. So not formally, no. But I don't anticipate an issue.
Okay, that was going to be my follow-up question. So there's nothing from the county that would, constrain us from implementing this plan.
No.
Okay. So then on the, I think it was Miss Hosney and Dr. Oliver. So in one of the slides about anticipated alternative spaces for larger classes, there's something that says select open classrooms. So for like Mount Prospect and kindergarten, there's like, Cedar Hill says we can keep in our classrooms because they're large enough. Liberty Corner says keep in classrooms. Oak Street says classrooms. Mount Prospect says select open classrooms. What does that mean?
That's my own terminology. I love it. So what it is, we have four classrooms that are deemed kindergarten classrooms, and 2 of them are virtual and 2 I have in person. So for example, if I don't get an additional staff member in first grade, I would have to move Mrs. Hall's class to a bigger classroom because those kindergarten classrooms are bigger. So I would move that to a specific select classroom, which would be the kindergarten classroom, as opposed to like our music room or our library or our cafeteria. So I have many open classrooms. Some are bigger, some are smaller. So we'd have to look at the numbers and how much room I need.
So select open classrooms means that space is either not being utilized currently, or it's being utilized by a virtual teacher who's teaching from the classroom without any students present. Understood?
Right, where we have the flexibility to move, yes.
Okay, so then this could be for Dr. Oliver or Ms. Hosney or Nick all kind of together or whatever. There are no, and Ms. Hosney, you said this, like there's no additional staff needed in kindergarten. It seems like there's the space to accommodate all of the kindergarten hybrid students for like the Plan 1 or Plan A amendment, the everyday half day plan for kindergarten. So and that's part of our ASAP sub plan, right? The K through 2 is, we want to get them in as soon as possible for literacy needs and to learn how to make friends and all that good stuff. So what is holding that part up? Just the kindergarten?
I mean, I can weigh in on that, Tim. I think for me, the biggest thing that I'm concerned about is what I see in the data that has been happening since our last board meeting.
So statewide numbers.
Yeah, that to me is the biggest, I don't want to say fear factor, but consideration in bringing those students together in larger groups. I do worry about the predictive trends that I saw from the governor's presentation on December 9th, as well as just the ongoing daily rate that we've been seeing in the last month. And I feel like if I could see that turning around and being consistently on a downward trend instead of consistently on an upward trend, I think that we'd have a lot more acceptance overall in people's comfort level.
Yeah, okay. I'm still of the view, I hear you. I know if you're looking at statewide numbers and you're expecting the total number of cases to start going down, I don't think that's going to happen anytime soon. I mean, rate of daily new cases might, kind of slope back, hopefully, because, it seems like maybe that's the trend. But I think at that, I'm still kind of a proponent of the kindergarten K through 2, let's get them in there. I know we're collecting data on, what, or we're having the daily form of what kids are exposed and have to quarantine and things like that. And I don't know what the prevalence is in K through 2 from students or staff, but maybe that's something to look at, because if we have the space and we have the staff, and I don't know that we're really increasing the numbers by bringing in, I didn't copy down that slide where you had the actual numbers of kids in each section, but if it's still like 12 or 13, I don't see what's holding up the kindergarten. And I think, from that point of the early literacy, social aspect, that, those are the kids that need to be here, in my opinion. Then the other thing that I wanted to just clarify or just understand was, so in elementary considerations for the longer days, or I guess I didn't really ask any question. I just kind of made a statement. So I don't know that there's any response necessary there, but on the elementary considerations for the longer days, there was the concepts of like maintaining 6 feet at all times and hallway traffic and things like that. But like, we're still in the cohorts on the longer days, right? It's still the same number of kids. We're not increasing student population on a daily basis, right?
Right. So, and it's an important observation that aside from the kindergarten 1, 2, right? Where
Yes.
we're obviously we are increasing class size if we're bringing in the kids every day. Even by adding some new teachers, you're still going to see an increase in class size. In the other scenario, right, Plan Amendment 2 for the other grades, you're still considering the cohort system, right? So that doesn't change the numbers of students that are coming every day, unless parents start to say, hey, and I know that Mrs. Hudak expressed concern that if we do allow the students to come for full days, is that going to change the numbers, right? And so that's where both Dr. Lazovic and Mrs. Hudak were talking about putting it to parents to say, if we do this, are you going to come back to school? And therefore, numbers are going to go up, right? So even though you're still on the cohort system, you could still have numbers going up. The other issue
so then
is
this would be like the third time that we've kind of posed that question of like, this is preliminary, what we're thinking.
Yes.
Now we might do it. Now we're actually going to do it. So I get that part of it. One last question, and I don't want to steal any thunder from the personnel report or what Sean might say, but in terms of the staff that we need for and this is back to the K1 through 2. So like those staff that we're looking for, the 4 additional like first grade teachers and the 3 additional second grade teachers, I know this from sitting in the personnel committee, and maybe it'll be a report out, but I think it's probably useful for the public to know, what we've done. Like we've had those jobs posted, and maybe Sean could give the update here. We've had those jobs posted for a while. We're getting some candidates. The quality seems to be, okay, moderate. I don't know, really great way to say that, but like, I think it might be useful for the public to hear, especially for the younger parents of younger kids, like what we've been doing to try to get those staff, because we have been doing this for a while. And like Ms. Hosey was saying, I think there's a lot of collaboration amongst the elementary principals on how to best manage staff across the district and limit the number of changed assignments and changed teachers, like Dr. Oliver was saying. So maybe if Sean wants to just chime in on, what we've been doing to try to get quality staff, right, for those little kids, that might be helpful at this point if he wants to do a quick one.
Yeah, sure. So, we did, when we made this decision to start exploring this option, we, of course, the first thing we do is we try to figure out what our numbers look like. And I know the principals have done an amazing job keeping a sense of keeping their finger on the pulse of how many staff they're going to need to make this work. And even before we had a concrete number, we posted for a K2 position, right? So right on the website, it's been up for about a month now. We've had that up. We did an ad in the paper. We contacted some local colleges, and the reality is there's a couple of challenges, right? I mean, even pre-COVID, there just aren't a lot of January graduates. So, the market isn't going to be flooded with bright-eyed, bushy-tailed, new provisional teachers. There's just not a lot of them in January in general. You combine that with the fact that there are less folks entering the teaching ranks, and the fact that we're in the middle of a pandemic and the colleges just aren't churning out a lot of candidates right now. They're not graduating them. And the ones that are highly coveted. And as Mr. Markarian mentioned earlier, there are quite a few districts competing. Obviously, we're in a great district, so it's a desirable place to work, but you still have other desirable places to work too, who are also trying to attract the same candidates. So, what I do is I look every day and a couple times a day, try to get tabs on what our applicants look like. And I see the principals are going in and looking at the applications, and we get a couple a day that trickle in, but to give the public a sense of how things are looking in terms of an applicant pool. Normally when we post a K-5 position, right, for one building, one position, we can have close to 100 candidates for one position who apply for a job. Right now, for a K2 position that's been posted for a month, we have 28, right? And of those candidates, many of them don't even have certification yet, so they're pre-service folks. They're either in the middle of student teaching, they'll be done in May. And so we are talking about some creative ideas to potentially bring in some folks that might have potential and perhaps work with their certification. But right now, the applicant pool isn't great. And, we're going to try to do our best. I mean, the good news is that, as we talked about, we hopefully can phase in. And as you mentioned, Mr. Salmon, we don't need kindergarten. So, if we focus our efforts on first grade and we think it's a manageable number to try to find 4, we just don't want to lower our standards because we do have high standards here. And that's the concern. We want Berners Township candidates. And so, yeah, we're going to continue to do our best. And the goal is to try to identify some enough for that January board meeting, the second board meeting in January. We're going to try to do our best to identify that. So, we've got a month to try to find enough candidates to make that first grade target.
Thanks, Sean. And thanks to all the principals for putting this together. This was, very helpful to understand where the constraints are and how we can move this forward.
I see Mrs. White has her hand up.
I mean, look, we all want the kids back in school and we want them back in school as much as possible. But based on the survey from however many weeks ago, we also know that parents want the cohorts to remain, that they feel that is one of the strategies that has worked in keeping the number down of students and staff who have gotten sick. That being said, when you increase the day, when it becomes a longer day, it also means longer periods of time on Zoom. And I guess I'm wondering what, when we talk about the 9-period day, yes, I would like to see the kids have normal 9-period days and actually physically see their teachers more than once a week in person. But that is a long time, and we've heard from teachers, we've heard from parents the concern that when it's not your in-person day, it's a long time on a computer. And I guess my question is, and you may not have an answer to share on this yet. I just want to know that it is something that is being talked about, looked into, explored. What are creative ways to have a 9-period day, but not have the students from 7:35 to 2:20, whenever they're dismissed, on a screen for both those students that are home and in school, because even in school, you might have a remote teacher, or you might have a lot of students in your class that are remote, so you are still Zooming in for that.
So I'll jump in. Okay. We've been having a lot of questions, Ms. Fox and Dr. Lazovic and I, about the implications at the secondary level. Keep in mind, right now, our students are on a 50-minute period schedule. Our 9-period day at the middle school is 40 minutes. If you tabulate the number of minutes and time in for attendance and sanitizing, that number will quickly drop. And so our teachers have learned over the course of time how to manage many of the tasks of the health and safety, and they've built them in. I have seen mastered balancing of students who are Zooming in, teachers working with one group while another group is Zooming and doing independent work to decrease their amount of screen time already. I've observed lessons where teachers flip-flopped in the middle of the period, where they worked with one group of students and then they sent them off of their screens and then began working with another one. Our staff has really had many balls in the air, and I think as we move forward into this next transition, we're going to continue to try and give them as much professional development on now managing this next piece. Being cognizant that it is a long time to be in front of a screen for anyone, including them. You know, fatigue and eye fatigue and strain and all of those things are things that, in addition to sicknesses and winter and COVID, are creeping up. And so, yes, those things are on the forefront. You know, obviously for the middle school, when it's your lunch, you're not expected to zoom into your lunch. And so there's a break built in there. That's natural, but we do need to kind of begin to explore what other options there are. And so that comes really with curriculum and professional development for our staff as we move into that next phase.
Ms. White, just jumping in on piggyback on Ms. Hudak's comments, we just recently had a PAC meeting at the high school, and there were this opinion was voiced, this concern was voiced multiple times. It's been voiced by staff members as well. As Ms. Hudak said, it's not just a long day on screens for students, it's a long day on screens for the staff members. And so again, I think Mr. Markarian's biggest push is that we want kids to want to come to school, and that we would make this change when it was healthy and safe. And in doing so, would hopefully get more students back physically in the building on a regular basis. But even then, because they're cohorted, we are aware that there is a long day at some point in the week where you may be on Zoom, you know, for longer than you currently are. Just remember, I know a lot of the students are currently going through their morning sessions, and then I jump in and I see tons of our teachers working with students still on the computer. So for many students, they're on Zoom now all the time. They're planning breaks differently than with a 9-period day, but there's just a huge amount of screen time going on. And then when you look at the homework that's being assigned, and so much of it's collaborative at our level, they're still on Zoom and other Google Meet and the rest, you know, or their phones, working with their friends, trying to get all the extra work done. So it absolutely is a legitimate concern, and one that we've been talking about.
Any other questions from board members? Okay, I'd just also like to say thank you and echo Mr.
I think Jen
Simmons'
has her hand. I think Jen,
comments.
Karen, I think Jen.
Oh, Jen.
Here I am.
Why can't I see Jen? I'm sorry, Jen.
I'm not
Go
bad.
ahead. Apologies.
It's all right. I have a question about, so I know we're using the state numbers for how we're, like, they're going up, but we also are in like, you know, our one town. So our schools are all from, you know, all the kids are from one town. We're not coming from all over the state. And our town, I mean, I don't know what the numbers, I don't know how Somerset County is in the orange. I don't know what I guess it's a percentage. I'm not sure how they work it, but whatever, needless to say. So once it's deemed safe that we can go back to school, once like the numbers come down, how, I just want to know how soon we'll be able to implement. Like I'm with Tim, I think the younger kids, honestly, it almost has to be on an emergency basis that we have to get them into school, because I feel like this has been terrible for everybody, but especially for the younger ones, the little ones that really need to be in school. So is there like a number? Do we have something, or does the state have to tell us we can do it? Like, when do we know? What's the magic number? Do we know? Or, you know, it's just because it's kind of floats out there, and then we're like, it's very confusing to know when is it going to be deemed safe? Is it whenever half the people get the vaccine? Like, what's going to be the, you know, the parameters to get the kids in there? And then once it is safe, how long will it take, you think, to transition to just our plan that we have now, the one that you're talking about now?
So I wish I could give you the answer to that question, Jen. I just don't know. You know, what is it that, you know, who decides what's safe? When is it safe? Who decides which town is safe enough to do something with? You know, at some point, you just have to make a decision. You consult with your local health official. You consult with your district physician. You work with your staff and your administration, and you say, okay, we think we're all right. We're going to try it on this day. You know, we haven't gotten to a day where we feel like, you know, we can name a date based on what we're seeing right now. It's really difficult to take that step forward after going through a month of high numbers. Can we disaggregate by town or disaggregate by Somerset County? I'd certainly be happy to have that conversation with our local health official and see if we can disaggregate data by Bernard's Township. We probably can. I imagine that data is somewhere. and we could take a look at it from a Berners Township perspective, and perhaps that generates a different perspective on how we're doing numbers wise. But certainly I think we all recognize that, as Jen said, we want to get students back in school, and I think everybody appreciates a desire to want to do that. And we've been putting a premium on K-1-2 for months, talking about could we do something more for this grade level. And I think there's certainly an ability and willingness and desire from everyone to try to do that. And at the kindergarten level, without needing to hire staff, we can definitely make that the first step. When is that? Do we feel pretty good about what we see in mid-January, perhaps, where we could have a conversation about trying something, as I mentioned at the last board meeting, as soon as possible, perhaps around the middle of the school year when the semester changes. And I think that if we could see a little bit of positive trending going on, perhaps then we can have an overall level of comfort, right? Because it's not just, for me, I want to take that step when I feel like there's an overall level of comfort, not one person feels comfortable, right? Not Nick feels comfortable or one principal feels comfortable, but we feel as though the tenor of our school community is such that this is an okay time to take this step.
Okay, I get that. And I have some numbers that Berners Township had 37 positive cases of all of last week. So that's good. I mean, there's got to be some good news somewhere, because I'm feeling like it's not a lot of good news. So I'm trying to it's just, I like to try to be a little bit positive, and I know, and I appreciate everything. And the work has been tremendous, and a lot of it. And I know everyone's working double time and triple time trying to get things done and make things good for us. It's just, it's hard to just every time say, oh, it's going to be, it's just hard. And I'm trying to just voice I think people, it gets frustrating after a while, when all you hear is bad news. I'm hoping that maybe after the holidays, we'll get some good news and they'll be able to implement this plan sooner than we think. That's my hope.
Thanks, Jen.
I just wanted to jump in real quick and say, I know there's towns that have the same numbers of COVID cases as Basking Ridge who have had shutdowns in their schools because they aren't doing the inhuman or superhuman efforts that Rita and our nurses have been doing with the contact tracing. I know our cohort model, like Holly said before, is helping us with, keeping the exposures down. But I think also there's been so many times where Rita is calling families at night and telling them, don't come to school tomorrow, that if we didn't have her doing that overtime, then the school would have been shut down because those kids would have come to school and exposed other kids. So I think, it's not just that we have low COVID numbers, which I don't really think we do in Berners Township. We've done a good job with that, and some other towns have struggled more with it. So I just wanted to point that out, that between this, I think our administration has been really careful crafting the plan and being cautious, and we have our nurses and Rita doing all this effort is why we've been able to do what we did at this point. So I feel confident that, I know things might be bad the next month or so, but after that, Jen, I feel confident that as we go forward, we're going to be able to do it because we have people doing the right thing.
I would just add to what Robin said, which I completely agree with, that it's not even just nights, it's all weekend. Rita's contacting families and trying to do the contact tracing to make sure that people aren't coming into our buildings that would then prevent us from being able to continue to be open to the degree that we are. It really is a huge task that they're taking on.
So I think we might have lost Mrs. Gray there for a second, but are there any other questions relative to the second?
Sorry about that.
Okay, I was just following up to see if there's any other questions relative to the presentation.
Anybody else? Okay, well, with that, I guess.
Ms. Beckman has.
Lauren's got her hand up.
Who?
Ms. Beckman.
Lauren.
Hi.
Oh, Laura,
Karen.
Lauren, I'm sorry. I didn't
That's
see
okay.
your hand. It's
I had
below
a
my.
question earlier for Mr. Site about the extra teachers that he's hiring. Are being hired as permanent employees or temporary or seasonal? I mean, we need them because of the COVID numbers or we need small class sizes, right? But once things are normal after COVID, do we still need those teachers?
Right. So what we'd be doing is like we do at the end of every year, we look at staffing, and staffing is directly tied to enrollment numbers and class size needs. So we'd be looking at the end of the year, if that need is still something that is going to need to be in place, then we're keeping staff. But in all likelihood, the staff we're hiring, we're probably not going to be keeping next year. It's temporary.
Thanks, Sean.
Yep.
Where'd she go now?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, Jen, go ahead. I heard
I
you.
just want, yeah, I don't have a question. I just think it's really important that we just say thank you to all the administration for working on all this, but also I'm sure that there are some teachers who are listening tonight, and to thank them for all their hard work. And I think what we and parents out there sometimes forget is none of us know how COVID has touched anybody in this community who is taking care of our children, whether it's A day, B day, virtual. And it's very easy to say the kids should be back and you should be doing this and you should feel safe, but we don't know a heck of a lot. And yes, we want our kids back in school and we want our teachers to be there to teach them, but we need to be sympathetic to the fact that these teachers have families, they have children, they have parents, they have siblings, they have relatives, they've suffered losses. And when we say you need to come in and you need to teach 9 periods and you need to teach full days, we need to take into consideration, we do not know what they've had to deal with in their family lives. And it's all well and good for us to want our kids in school. It is the goal. But I just think we need to be mindful of that and not forget that, because we've been very lucky in our town in terms of, the students and what we are aware of has happened. But there's a lot that we don't know that has gone on behind the scenes for staff and teachers and families. And I just think it's important that while we're all saying, you should be doing this and you should be doing that, and when is this happening and what's the date, that we just keep that in mind.
Thank you, Mrs. White. Okay, I don't see any other hands. Am I missing anybody's hands? Okay, so then let's proceed to the next item. Mr. Markarian, we have the superintendent's report.
Thank you. Yes. So we do have one standard voting item. Maybe we could take care of that. And then I just have a few words. So we need a motion and a second for the HIB report.
Okay, so could we have a motion on the HIB report, please? I see Mrs. McCune and Mr. Salmon. Oh, yeah. Mr. McLaughlin, can we have a roll call, please?
I had Mr. Salmon as a second. Could you repeat who moved the motion, please?
Mrs. McCune.
Thank you. Sorry.
It's okay.
Ms. Beckman,
Yes.
Ms. Schaefer,
Yes.
Mr. Salmon,
Yes.
Mrs. White,
Yes.
Mrs. Korn,
Yes.
Mrs. Wooldridge,
Yes.
Mrs. McCune,
Yes.
Mrs. Gray,
Yes, sorry, I'm relocating to try to get a better signal and I don't want to get anybody nauseous. So I put my camera off.
Madam President.
So
Okay, Mr. Markarian.
thank you. Thank you, Madam President. So I just wanted to take a moment. Obviously, I mentioned at the beginning of the meeting that I wanted to wish everybody a wonderful holiday, a wonderful winter break. I hope everybody, despite our circumstances, is able to find a way to enjoy some time with family. And just to kind of pitch the letter that I wrote recently, I guess it was last week, Tuesday or Wednesday, in the SOS Express, you know, the rationale behind the all virtual week from January 4th to January 8th. So I know Rita's not here at the meeting tonight. She certainly needed a break, I think, and I'm glad she didn't have to come tonight, but I will pitch for her a little bit, the rationale behind that week. And just really asking everybody to use the week wisely and to take good care of their health and really evaluate where things stand before coming back to school on January 11th. And we certainly hope everyone is able to, you know, do what they can do to be with people and loved ones over the holiday, and then take that week to make sure everybody's feeling well before coming back to school. So I wish everyone the best. And I certainly want to take a quick moment. I know we have some board members that wanted to speak as well this evening, and we're going to take a little bit of time now to recognize Linda Woolridge. Linda has been on the board as long as I can remember being in the board office. She has been a dedicated servant to the Berners Township community, serving in this public capacity for many years. She has always been a great sounding board, a very wonderful, warm-hearted person who has always worked with the staff and the Board of Education and the community with the students' best interests in mind. And I'm going to miss you very much, Linda. For those of you that might not be aware, this is Linda Woolridge's last Board of Education meeting. So Linda, thank you so much for all your years of service. I know that there's a couple board members at least that would probably like to say some things. I can tell you that the board was very pleased to be able to send a little thank you gift to Linda this week. Given the current state of dining right now, the gift was basically a Grubhub gift card. To take the place of perhaps what might have been a fine dining experience at a specific establishment. But this way you could kind of take your pick. So the board members thought that would be fun for you, Linda. And also the flowers that were sent to your home. It's just a small gesture for a thank you for all your years of service. So thank you very much, Linda. It's been a privilege to work with you.
So from the board's perspective, I'd like to just quickly say a couple of things. Linda, we would all like to congratulate you on your retirement from the Board of Education. Linda has served, for those of you who don't know, Linda has served on the board for the past 9.5 years. She's so dedicated and so hardworking. She is thorough to perfection, honestly, and she is always level-headed and puts the needs of our students first, which, you know, who can argue with that? In her time on the board, she has literally done every job there is. She has served on every board committee, often serving on 3 at a time while chairing one of the committees. Her willingness to fill in for any other board member in need of an alternate has always been appreciated. She's served as both board president and board vice president, as well as having represented the Board of Education on the contract negotiations team several times. She's always willing to help with editing of minutes or other documents, and her diligent note-taking has been relied upon more than a few occasions, especially when we needed to recall details. Linda's excellent at that. And your presence on the board is going to be sorely missed, Linda. We wish you the very, very best. I do think that Mrs. McCune has a couple things she'd like to say, so I'm going to pass it to her.
Thanks, Karen. Yeah, so it's been an interesting decade together, Linda. Things are, very different than they were when we started, a decade ago on the board together, but a lot of things are still the same. I just wanted to also mention to the public who might not be aware that not only did Linda do all these jobs on the board over all these years, but she also served for years as the Municipal Alliance representative from the Board of Education for the township, and also on the Somerset County Ed Services Commission, not only attending their meetings, but serving on their executive committee, which is like even more work. So Linda deserves a big thank you for all of the dedicated time she's devoted to our students and the county students in those other roles. Also, just wanted to also thank Linda for being so thoughtful and kind during her years on the board. She's listened to me for countless hours when I've been upset or had to talk things through. And I know she's done the same for other board members. She's always calm and thoughtful, and she always did her research and made intelligent decisions. So she's kind of like the epitome of what you'd want in a board member in terms of the thought that they put into the job and really learning everything. Linda always went to all the sessions at school boards, and she was always willing to go to the boring ones that we didn't want to go to. So anyway, we want to thank you, Linda, for all your hard work, and we wish you much happiness in your retirement. And I know Scarlett's going to be happy that you can see her even more now and spend time with her. So thank you.
Well, gee, guys, thanks. It's, I just, I'm a little overwhelmed by all this, but I just wanted to say that, there's been some tough times, during the time I've been on the board with budget cuts and other things, but the past year, with the pandemic, the difficulties, like, it's far surpassed. And I just wanted, and I know, other people have said it, but I just wanted to recognize, the huge amount of work that everybody has done and continues to do, including, the administrators, the teachers, the nursing staff, other staff, and all the board members under extremely difficult and challenging circumstances. And I just wish, everyone a safe and healthy holiday, and that, hope that, things, 2021 is a better year for everybody. So thank you guys again. Yeah, I really appreciated the gift card, and the flowers are beautiful. And, it feels kind of strange that this is my last board meeting.
Thanks, Linda.
Sure.
We're glad you've had the chance to serve with you, Linda.
Well, thanks. And I've enjoyed serving with everyone as well, very much.
All right, with that, Mr. Markarian, I think we are up to public comment on agenda items. So Ms. Fox, do we have anyone in the waiting room?
Yes, we do. I'm going to let in the people who've been waiting for quite a while. First one is Melanie Dupuy, BTEA co-president.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me okay?
Hi, Melanie.
Hi. Hi. Good evening. My name is Melanie Dupuy, 70 Quincy Road, and I'm the co-president of the Bernards Township Education Association. I want to say that we really appreciate the efforts of our administration and the board, and of course our staff and our students during this unprecedented and very challenging time. From the start, we have been among those who serve as a model for best practices and effective labor management relations. And from the start, the health and safety of students, staff, and our community have been our priority. However, we now find ourselves at a crossroads. As we enter the holiday season, COVID-19 is spreading throughout the state. In fact, all 21 counties in New Jersey are now categorized as high risk, and as per state health guidelines, should now consider implementing fully remote learning. We know that over the Thanksgiving holiday, many families gathered with groups of friends and family, or even traveled out of state, which likely exacerbated the already high levels of infection. We also know that the upcoming winter holidays will provide a similar temptation, as understandably, many have grown weary of being estranged from their loved ones. With that said, the BTA fully supports the decision by the Board of Education and Mr. Markarian to shift to all virtual instruction until Monday, January 11th, in order to avoid any unnecessary transmission and monitor the inevitable post-holiday surge. It was a proactive decision based on the data from Thanksgiving, and that will keep more people safe and more buildings open in the long run. Like many of you, I'm sure, I was incredibly heartened by the images of vaccines being deployed around the country. For the first time in a very long time, it's starting to feel like we're approaching the end. However, we need to remain vigilant throughout the winter and must continue to follow all CDC and health department guidance concerning the potential for exposure to COVID-19. Despite the hope that's on the horizon, I can tell you that the fear is palpable and growing as cases in our community continue to rise. We cannot mitigate all risk, but making changes to our hybrid model during the winter months, during high community spread, is not something I can support. So thank you for proceeding with caution and continuing to take our safety seriously. I recognize the importance of planning for the next phase of instruction. The more we plan, the better prepared we will be. However, I don't think we should move forward with changes to our current hybrid model until the rates of transmission and cases have been brought under control and our region has returned to the green low risk zone. The stakes are just too high. So I really appreciate the clear message tonight that no changes should be made until we feel safe and prepared to do so. The bottom line is that nothing matters more than the health and safety of our students, our staff, and our community, and our school district should continue to take the lead in helping to protect all of us. Thank you very much for your time. I wish everyone on the board and the community happy holidays. Ms. Woolridge, congratulations on a great career in the Board of Education. Happy New Year. Take care, everyone.
Next is Karen Pellicone, the other BTEA co-president. Hello, Karen. Karen, are you able to hear me? You're still muted.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I'll start my video.
Yeah, you can go ahead. Thanks. Hi.
Okay, hello everybody. Good evening. Thank you so much for allowing me the opportunity to speak tonight. My name is Karen Pellicone, 111 Handsome Road, and I am another co-president of the Bernards Township Education Association. Those of you who don't know me, I've been an elementary school teacher in our district for the past 27 years. I would like to take this opportunity to commend the district's efforts for truly putting the safety of our students, staff, and community first during this very difficult and unprecedented time. From the start, it has been clear that our collective health and safety has been your priority while balancing the academic and socio-emotional needs of all the students. Despite the surge in positive cases that New Jersey has seen recently, our district has so far managed to effectively keep our schools open for in-person cohort instruction. This success is a result of the collective effort between school board members, administrators, nurses, teachers, educational support professionals, parents, and students. We all have the important role in following school protocol and procedures to maintain a healthy and safe environment. We do work together for the greater good in our Basking Ridge community because that's what we do. While the district has gotten it right so far, I definitely echo the serious concerns many have expressed in the possibility of phasing in both cohorts at the lower elementary school level, while Somerset County and most of New Jersey remains in that high-risk category. There is a strong possibility in moving into the highest risk category after a surge of post-holiday positive COVID cases come to light. The district has been on point to implement virtual instruction for that first week in January. We may not see the results of the surge until 2 weeks after break. I know that these decisions are not made lightly. There is much discussion and debate with board members, administrators, and healthcare experts. Please let me be clear. There is nothing that BTA members want more than to greet all the students in person, in school, for longer periods of time. But if the district moves fast in the direction of combining cohorts and increasing the number of students in the buildings for longer periods of time, it is scientifically possible for a greater chance of in-school transmission from these post-holiday positive cases. For these reasons, I am respectfully asking the board to please slow down to ensure that they continue to prioritize our collective health and safety. And I think that message was made clear tonight in the presentations. With the vaccine's arrival in the United States last week, there is a light at the end of the tunnel. We're almost there and we're about to turn a corner. I know we are pandemic tired, but however, to truly beat this virus once and for all, we cannot afford to make any mistakes. Let's continue to be patient, continue to do what's best for our students, and most of all, let's continue to do it together as we have always done. Thank you for listening. I wish everybody a wonderful holiday, Happy New Year, and stay safe.
Thank you. All right, I'm going to let in the next person is Neil Gumadi. Thanks, Karen.
Thanks.
Looks like he's having trouble connecting.
Ms. Fox, perhaps try letting somebody else in while that connection's trying to be made.
Will do. Kelly Salaz.
Want to go for the last one?
One more.
One more.
Ian Shepper. Hello, Ian.
Hi, my name is Ian Shepper from 59 Gulcher Drive. I want to thank you for giving the detailed presentation. And I was wondering if we were doing the full 9 period.
One more.
Ian Shepper.
Hi, I'm Ian Shepper from 59 Gulcher Drive.
Hello, Ian.
Ask if they can hear you.
Hi, can you hear me? Hi, my name is
We
Ian
can hear you.
You need to mute the YouTube.
Detailed
Oh.
presentation.
What?
And I was wondering if we were doing
Hold on a
the
sec.
full 9 period. What?
You need to mute here. Let's close this guy. Sorry, we're new.
That's fine.
So,
I think they know who you are
Okay.
and where you live.
So, thanks for the detailed presentation. I was wondering if we were if we move the full days at Ridge and middle school to 9 periods a day, would we alternate instead of going full virtual on Wednesdays, would we alternate from cohort A to cohort B every other week?
I think we could say the answer to that question is very likely yes, Ian.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey, Ian, sorry, I just want to interrupt. I'm very proud of you, buddy, for taking the time to speak at tonight's Board of Ed meeting. Good to see you, bud.
Well, great job, Ian.
Thank you.
So, Mr. Markarian, that's it in the waiting room.
So I would just a reminder, we apologize for, I know there were 2 folks that were trying to make public comment using the video features here of Zoom. We apologize that did not work. If you are still listening, please be reminded that you can use the btconnect@bernardsboe.com email address, btconnect@bernardsboe.com. Please just include your name and address with your comment, and we can read it into the record that way. President?
So are we still keeping track, Mr. Syed? I'm sorry, let me start again. My apologies. Ms. Fox or Mr. Syed, who's keeping track of the email or text public comments?
So Ms. Fox was working the waiting room. Mr. Syed was working the email, btconnect@bernardsboe.com. So I'm sure he's prepared to let us know if we have any emails.
Mr. Syed, do we have anything?
Yes, we do. Yes. And if I could just echo what Mr. Markarian shared about the need for the community member to include their name and their address in order for it to be read into the record. There is one comment submitted that doesn't have an address, so I won't be able to read that one. So if the individual could send in the email with their address on it, of course, I'll read it. So let me read the first one. The first one is from Ann Pinto, 16 Berkeley Circle. Hello, board members. Thank you for deciding to go all virtual the week following the break. Your decision will help reduce the spread of COVID among students, all school personnel, and families in our town, as well as other towns. The next comment, let's see, is from Keith Malinari, 27 Franklin Drive. I would like to thank the administration for the comments and recent emails and Friday folders addressing attendance and what is an acceptable absence for in-person instruction and what is not. Hopefully, when we return from the holidays, these rules will be enforced. My children, one WAMS, one Ridge, are both hybrid and both report disturbingly low attendance on in-person days. Classrooms with only one other student, and in the case of my high schooler, classes with just the teacher. Unfortunately, you have done just what you said you don't want to do, which is create a situation where kids don't want to come to school, which could be contributing to the increase in virtual students, a negative spiral. This was obviously never what was intended when we returned to live instruction, and it is hurting those students who have chosen to come back live. With the low levels of attendance, has the board considered A, revisiting the decision not to go back to in-person 5 days a week at all levels? It does not seem that even at 5 days a week, these classrooms will be overcrowded. Even with more students and less social distancing, will not the masks and other safety procedures be enough? Unlike the wider community, transmission is not rampant in classroom settings. The numbers have been excellent as far as in-school transmission goes. Keeping our kids out of class is doing actual harm, educational, social, emotional, mental harm. In the hopes of avoiding potential harm from a virus that has been shown to spread much more rapidly in those outside than in school. B, holding families to their decisions. If a student is breaking attendance rules as spelled out in your emails, there needs to be consequences. A choice for virtual or in-person cannot be a constantly fluid choice. People need to make a decision, at least for a marking period, and barring medical necessity, be held to that decision, just like people are held to attendance standards normally. Okay, the next comment is from Josh Scribner, 6 Lincroft Drive. We have heard over the past 3 meetings an incredible focus on in-school teaching efforts. The sum total of student time in our district results in more than half of the time spent remote. with around a third of students being 100% virtual. Please share how we have grown the investment in planning and resources to provide this schooling time. How are we helping the teachers who are going above and beyond to teach virtually? What new software are we licensing to improve student education? What kind of specials are we bringing to kids who can't be in person? What kind of virtual socialization are we doing? School isn't a building kids go to, it is the environment they are learning in. And this year, it's virtual. What are we doing to make it the best it can be? The next public comment is from Evan Glanz, 33 Martinsville Road. It is absolutely absurd that our children, K2, have not returned to more than 2 days a week. Every other district in the county has more live instruction for this level. Why can other districts with less resources get this done? When is this happening? Can we please stop talking about it and surveying about it? We are forced to consider private school without a real plan and definitive timeline. The next public comment is from Dave Anderson, 31 Dryden Road. 1, since August, how many cases of in-school transmission have we had in Bernards Township? 2, by allowing kindergartners back in full time, what is the additional risk you are taking if you follow the same guidelines for daily cohorts? 3, how has St. James been able to do this full time with lunch since September for nine grades and we can't even get kindergarten back? The next public comment is from Don Simone at 4 High Hill Court. First, thanks for all you are doing. Keeping our students and teachers safe is a Herculean effort, and you have out. Thanks for keeping everyone safe and our schools open. 1, Mr. Markarian hit an interesting point. The kids need to want to get back to school. I can say my 2 Ridge students are not feeling it right now. Anecdotally, half the kids and less than half the teachers are in school. My kids say a lot of people are just staying home. It's easier to cheat and you can sleep in. They feel like it's a waste of time to go to school without a teacher in the classroom. One of my kids only has elective teachers that are there in person. Math, science, social studies, and science teachers are all remote. Even if they're in school, they are still on Zoom most of the time. What can we do to make the kids go back to school after the holidays? 2, have you thought about sharing virtual teachers among the elementary schools to help balance the load? It really doesn't matter what part of town the kids are from if they're attending virtually anyway. I know from my own kids that in elementary schools, their universe was mostly made up of their classroom at that time. So I would imagine we could spread the load among all our elementary virtual classes if needed. 3, if the first week after New Year's of virtual time isn't enough, please don't hesitate to extend it another week. I appreciate the proactive nature of the decision. I think it's one of the wisest things you could have done. Thank you for your service and happy holidays. And that's all the public comment at this time.
Thank you, Mr. Syatt. Mr. Markarian, is there anything you'd like to address from the public comments?
Sure. The virtual balancing across the district, that's actually something that we did the first go around in balancing virtual classes. So we have done that in the past. As we built the virtual sections, there was some cross-town assignments, if you will, to try to balance numbers a little bit. So we have used that strategy. The challenge of getting kids back to school while dealing with all of these variables is one we recognize. We don't have any immediate solutions to that right now. We're trying to put our heads together and see what we can come up with. But it's difficult in a situation where, as pointed out, for many completely legitimate reasons, staff are not necessarily in the classroom in person. They're teaching remotely, and a lot of the social aspects of school that the students like are highly regulated and or impossible right now. The challenge K2, I think some of the questions around that were related to transmission, and I think one of the challenges that we have is that we feel good that we've done very, very well with the measures that we've had in place in avoiding transmission in schools, right? And when you have a record of success, there's a natural tendency to think that, well, what we're doing is working. Isn't it a risk to do something different? That perhaps what you've been doing is the reason that you haven't had transmission. And if you change to something that brings more students into a space, you're changing the circumstances that prove to be effective. And I think there's some concern about that possibility happening. And I think that speaks to a little bit of why there isn't a hard date set in stone as to when a change is going to be made. And I appreciate, as I said in the presentation tonight, that is frustrating, but we have to be patient to try to pick our spot as to when to make any of these changes. As far as other school districts and what they're doing, when I get into the weeds talking to other districts, although I have not spoken to St. James, and every district has its own set of variables, and sometimes the first variable is how many students are they dealing with how many teachers and how many classrooms, and what is their class size like. And that's one of the first things that you need to take a look at when comparing school districts. So there's a lot of variables there, and you kind of have to get into the weeds with each one to understand the differences. That's all. Thank you. Oh, I'm sorry. There was one other question, and I know Ms. Fox could probably go on forever about it, but it had to do with the idea of, what are you doing to make things better virtually? What kind of softwares are you using? If you want to just give a few examples, Ms. Fox, I don't want to be on all night going over everything you've done with curriculum.
Sure. No, you're right. We could go on for a long time. I think I could say that the teachers, the staff, they've all grown tremendously since this daily professional development endeavor began in March. So yes, professional development trainings are always in the works. Our instructional coaches are constantly planning and training, and we're working on some things coming up in the new year, as well as some dedicated staff members and all of the admin. We've purchased a number of resources that the teachers are utilizing, and in fact, we'll be faced with some decisions about what we can and cannot keep next year, including Nearpod, some softwares for assessment like Edulastic and Formative. And you're right, the list is extensive, probably several dozen new pieces of software that teachers have spent time learning in school and out of school.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ms. Fox. From a board member perspective, and other board members feel free to jump in, I just like to say that to that particular question, we can assure you that at every opportunity for us to ask those questions, we are asking those questions, and we have heard in strength and volume that the staff is very focused on improving in those areas. And Ms. Fox just mentioned some of the ways. This is not something that has fallen by the wayside. I don't know if anyone wants to add anything. I don't want to go on. No? Okay. All right, well then, I guess with that, we have moved to our next agenda item, which is approval of minutes. If I could have a motion. Ms. White and Ms. Korn. And Mr. McLaughlin, if we could have a roll call, please.
Ms. Beckman,
Yes.
Ms. Schaefer,
Yes.
Mr. Salmon,
Yes.
Mrs. White,
Yes.
Mrs. Korn,
Yes.
Mrs. Wooldridge,
Yes, on the executive session and abstain on the regular session.
Mrs. McCune,
Yes.
Mrs. Gray,
Yes,
Madam President.
thank you. Okay, then we are on to the Finance Committee report. If we could have a motion and a second, please. Mrs. McCune and Mrs. Wooldridge. And then Mr. Salmon, I believe you have a report. We have 23 items, by the way. There is an addendum.
Yes, so Finance met on Wednesdays, December 16th. The first item for discussion was an update to the explanation about the Chapter 44 New Jersey Educators Health Plan, the plan that will be implemented by the state and required to be implemented by the districts. Even though we are self-insured, we are required to offer an analogous plan to the New Jersey Educators Health Plan. Mr. Wendriff from Arthur J. Gallagher, the district actuary and consultant, provided an explanation on the New Jersey Educators Health Plan versus Chapter 78. So under Chapter 78, employees would contribute based on a percentage of the insurance plan premium that they had selected. Under the New Jersey Educators Health Plan, the employee's contribution is a percentage of his or her salary. What that means is that on an annualized basis, the New Jersey Educators Health Plan would, based on preliminary numbers, cost the district more money than would the implementation of Chapter 78. It would take time to understand whether the savings that are proposed by the state in promulgating the New Jersey Educators Health Plan will be realized based on the certain differences between plans offered by the district and the Educators Health Plan. One other item was an update on our cost projections for our actual claim costs and cost projections for the 2021 school year based on current claims data that we have from July, October, and Mr. Wendroff's projections through June 2021. The district anticipates of having costs approximately $573,000 beyond the budgeted amount, of which approximately $220,000 is from the New Jersey Educators Health Plan implementation from January 1st through June 30th. The second item for discussion was an update on Aramark facilities and the custodial staff. Mr. Leon Kohler from Aramark and Bill Gerichter, president of Advocate, who is the food service and facilities consultant for the district, joined the meeting and explained that several of the custodians have had to quarantine. One is on FMLA leave, but those custodians are returning to work shortly in the first few weeks of January. They also, the Aramark representative also indicated that 2 new custodians would be starting on December 17th. But in general, the discussion was about turnover at the custodial level and how we could mitigate some of that or keep the candidates in their roles. Mr. Kohler explained that Aramark is using various incentives to find and retain candidates. He also explained their sourcing and hiring process, in that Aramark, the corporate side, finds candidates through job boards and referrals and then hands those candidate names off to our district facilities manager, who is responsible for interviewing those candidates. And then if successful, then he would refer them back to the corporate for their background screening. We talked with Aramark about different ways to streamline the process, in that maybe Aramark corporate could do some of the more heavy lift on the interviewing and just hand candidates off to the district to be ready to start. So Mr. Gerichter explained that, which dovetails into the next topic, but Mr. Gerichter explained that it might be difficult to get new people so late in our contract with Aramark. The district is going out to bid for the facilities and grounds contract in the spring. It's possible that our costs may be mitigated somewhat because we may be reducing some custodial level back when the pandemic subsides. The next item was food service under the Aramark items. We had previously reported that we could buy free and reduced, we could shut down our Aramark service in district and provide and purchase free and reduced lunches from Bridgewater. Purchase lunches from Bridgewater to provide for our free and reduced lunch students. However, Mr. Gerichter explained that that would require giving Aramark 30 days notice to restart their own food service. Because the district is potentially going back to a longer day at some point, and food service would be necessary. We have not yet furloughed the Aramark staff in district, because that would have required essentially furloughing them and then potentially telling them that they would have to restart in a week or two. So we still have Aramark staff making free and reduced lunches for students. The next item was an update on the Ridge High School sanitary lines project. Mr. Perrin, who's the Assistant Director of Facilities in the district, explained that the piping in the alleyway behind the new gym and through the storage room is complete. The contractor will begin work on the hallway behind the cafeteria on Saturday, December 19th, and we are on track for completion by January 4th. The next item was the review of the annual audit by Scott McClelland, who's a partner in Wison Company, the district auditor. Mr. McClelland reviewed the draft annual audit with the committee. The audit is substantially complete and will be finalized for submission by the February 5th deadline. Mr. Cleland stated that the audit produced a clean, unmodified opinion, which is the best opinion possible. Next item was the update on the WAM Science Lab project. We had 15 bidders for the WAM Science Lab project. J&M Quality was the low bidder and will be awarded the contract. The next item was an update on or a situation about the Oak Street School gutters and roof. 2 areas at Oak Street School are experiencing leakage during heavy rain, a restroom adjacent to the entrance and an area of the auditorium. Mr. Perrin visually observed the leak and determined that some old damaged gutters and flashing was resulting in rain running down the side of the building and into the affected areas. Mr. McLaughlin asked Tony Katana, which is from Spiesel Architect, which is the district architect, to determine whether the gutters needed immediate replacement. Mr. Katana recommended using an interim solution by extending the flashing on the roof so that the water runs off the roof and directly onto the ground until we can bid out a roof gutter replacement job. This interim solution was also used when there was a leak in the Oak Street gym. The committee recommended proceeding with Mr. Katana's proposed interim solution. It will remedy the leak issue and allow the district to go out to bid for the roof replacement and gutter replacement job in the fall, when we will get a more competitive bidding situation. The district does have a grant that will cover $600,000 towards the cost of the roof and gutter replacement. In terms of the items that are on the agenda, 1 through 3 are standing items. 4 is professional development. 5 is acceptance of a donation from the WAMS PTO to be used towards the purchase of wish list items. So thank you very much to the WAMS PTO. Number 6 is accepting a donation from, it's clarifying a donation from the Liberty Corner PTO for their playground project. They purchased some equipment directly and contributed some money for landscaping, and the balance was provided to the balance of the donation was provided to the board. So thank you very much again to the Liberty Corner PTO. Items 7 through 12 are student services. 14 through 16 increase authorized amounts for out-of-district placements. 17 amends the list of approved district contractors to include a contractor on our state approved contractor list. Number 18 reflects an additional $21,000 in CARES Act money that was received. Number 19 accepts some incoming out-of-district students. Number 20 approves a maintenance reserve withdrawal for the Ridge High School sanitary lines project. Number 21 accepts the audit from Wison Company. Number 22 awards the WAMS Science Lab project bid to J&M Quality Construction. And the final item on the addendum approves submission of a grant application to and memorandum of agreement with Somerset County for the reallocation of CARES funding to assist with offsetting COVID-related expenses that are eligible but have not otherwise been eligible for payment through other federal grants or insurance. That's it.
Thanks, Mr. Salmon. Does anyone have any questions for Mr. Salmon? Okay, seeing none, Mr. McLaughlin, could we please have a roll call?
Ms. Beckman,
Yes.
Ms. Schaefer,
Yes.
Mr. Salmon,
Yes.
Mrs. White,
Yes.
Mrs. Korn,
Yes.
Mrs. Wooldridge,
Yes.
Mrs. McCune,
Yes.
Mrs. Gray,
Yes.
Madam President.
Thank you, Mr. McLaughlin. Our next item is the Personnel Committee report. We have 22 items for approval on the agenda. If I could have a thank you, Mr. Salmon is the motion, and the second is Ms. Schaefer. The Personnel Committee met on Friday, December 18th. The only non-confidential business that was discussed was actually covered in the return to instruction portion of the agenda. Board members, if you have any questions, feel free to ask me about the minutes. Mr. Salmon, were you raising your hand? Okay, just want to make sure. I was missing people's hands before, so I'm being extra cautious. So if no one has any questions, then Mr. McLaughlin, could we have a roll call, please?
Ms. Beckman,
Yes.
Ms. Schaefer,
Yes.
Mr. Salmon,
Yes.
Mrs. White,
Yes.
Mrs. Korn,
Yes.
Mrs. Wooldridge,
Yes.
Mrs. McCune,
Yes.
Mrs. Gray,
Yes,
Madam President.
thank you. So our next item is the policy committee report. Ms. Korn?
Yep, I got it here. So policy committee met on Monday, December 14th. And there's a bunch of discussion items. The first one would be the COVID screening forms and travel. The CDC update had trickled down to the New Jersey travel rules. The CDC issued updated quarantine guidelines stating that a 7 to 10 quarantine would be sufficient with the negative test 5 days after exposure for those who need to get back to work, etc. But they stress that the best practices are still the 14-day quarantine. The New Jersey Department of Health has not changed the quarantine rules for schools. It's still 14 days after exposure. And the New Jersey Department of Education did update the quarantine rules for travel, and the quarantine is now 10 days for travel. Community notice letters regarding the positive or probable cases of COVID-19. So the community notices were dropped in favor of posting it on the website. Instead of sending out letters each day updating the COVID cases, there's a chart on the Burns BOE website that will be updated daily with any new or pending cases. And this will be the case even if there are no new numbers to report. It'll just say 0. There are cumulative numbers at the bottom of the chart tracking, and they've been tracking the numbers since October 1st, 2020 is when we went in person. Close contacts will still be notified before the chart is updated, just like before the letters went out, the close contacts were notified. All the information contained in the daily letters are surrounding the chart. So the chart's in the middle, and all the information you normally get in that letter is around the chart. And Mr. Markarian had informed the public of the change in, I'm pretty sure it's the Friday before our meeting's SOS message. So it's probably a couple weeks ago. So it's been going on for a while. I'm sure people already are using it. We also talked about the school closures for health and safety reasons and snow. And since we had our first snow day, which was a treat. So Mr. Markarian sent out an email the past weekends, a couple of weeks ago, to all staff hoping to clarify the issue. In the case of a freak ice storm or a weather event that keeps us from school, but there's power, it's not really a day to be outside, you know, we can go to virtual learning and have a day count towards our 180 days of school. If we're hit with a big snowstorm like we were this past week, where you have to dig out, would tell parents or teachers to shoveling and dig out and kids wanting to, you know, go out and play in the snow, then we would take our traditional snow day. And Wednesdays, which the middle and high school are virtual, but the elementary and special ed are still in school, are going to be treated as a normal day as far as snow days go, using the same parameters I just talked about. So we treat Wednesdays the same as any other day. The emergency weather guide was updated to reflect our current COVID school schedule. There's a lot of information on there. It's on the webpage. The language was added stating that inclement weather might mean closure unless we go virtual, which is what we just talked about for like the closures for snow days. A delayed opening extends the school day. So you'd be starting later and ending later. And an early dismissal doesn't really exist right now because we're already on shortened days. So we already get out early. We talked about the return to instruction plan, but Mr. Markarian just gave us that whole presentation. Except for, I think we had talked about the Zoom adjustment for the K through 5, the PM Zoom adjustment. And Ms. Fox had met with the K through 5 BTA to discuss making adjustments to the afternoon Zoom's check-ins. So there's more, it's more of a curricular issue because the teachers are running out of time for prep and meetings with their building teams. So the 30-minute lunch and transition time immediately after live school, split between, travel and teacher prep, leaving little time for the building teams to work together. And the recommendation was to reallocate some of the afternoons to planning and collaboration. So although Wednesdays have no PM Zoom with students, there are mandatory district-wide meetings. And the teachers are struggling to find time to meet with their building level teams, which is important for them to collaborate on certain things. So the elementary bell schedule includes a 40-minute check-in 4 days a week. Monday and Tuesdays are cohort A, and Thursdays and Fridays are cohort B. Some teachers can mix it up for kids who are struggling, but ultimately like to pull the check-ins back to 1 per week for each cohort. And this would give the teachers more flexibility to schedule time for either lesson planning, where they're developing lessons or recording videos, to give feedback to students digitally for the online assignments that they're doing, and also to meet with their building team, like for example, with the Oak Street first grade team being able to meet together. And even with the change in the PM Zoom schedule, students would still be receiving the same level of instruction, 1 small group lesson per week in reading, writing, and math. Depending on the student schedule, there would still be afternoon activities such as afternoon specials, small group quests, and reading or math specialists. We also discussed the 2021 board meeting schedule. If anyone's falling asleep, you take a nap during this. These are really. So there's a few dates that need to be finalized for the board's meeting schedule for next year, and it was decided to schedule the board meetings. The board meeting in question was on April 5th, because it keeps the board meetings well spaced and doesn't interfere with spring break. And then we scheduled the October 4th, even though we have a back-to-back meeting, we need to have a meeting in October, and that was the best option between the two options. And then we have a second reading for the 2023-24 school district calendar, which we went over last time. Does anyone have any questions? Jen?
Okay, so I'm looking at the calendar, and I don't know if this, was just oversight. We just didn't pick up on it. But so for this coming 21-22 school year, Labor Day and Rosh Hashanah fall on the same day. So the actual first day of school that we have it now on the calendar for is the first day of Rosh Hashanah, which we really should look at. I know we have a policy that it's the either or. You get, it's either Rosh Hashanah you have off or Yom Kippur. But I would love for policy to look back and perhaps add language that might say something to the effect of, in the case of Rosh Hashanah falling on the first day of school, the first day of school will then start the next day, so to speak.
And I think what we're talking about today, just to be clear, the second readings for the 23-24 school schedule. So that's what we're voting on today.
Right. So why don't we do this? Why don't we do the vote? And then I think what Jen is asking, and I think we're in agreement on this, is that we need to send the other calendar back to policy so that the board can discuss it.
I just wanted to make sure you knew we weren't voting on that.
Yes, yes, but I didn't know when the right time to.
No, that's good. I just want to make sure that was clear. That's all. Okay. Yeah. I would vote, and then we'll.
Okay. So Mr. McLaughlin, can we have a roll call? Oh, we don't have a motion. Could we have a motion, please? Mrs. Korn and Mrs. Beckman. And then could we please have a roll call?
Ms. Beckman,
Yes.
Ms. Schaefer,
Yes.
Mr. Salmon,
Yes.
Mrs. White,
Yes.
Mrs. Korn,
Yes.
Mrs. Wooldridge,
Yes.
Mrs. McCune,
Yes.
Mrs. Gray,
Yes.
Madam President.
Thank you. So Mr. McLaughlin, I'm not Mr. McLaughlin, sorry, Mr. Markarian, are we okay with then kicking that question that Jen has brought up back to policy so that we can discuss this after the next policy meeting?
Sure.
Thank you. Okay, and with that, we are on
The next,
to.
I'm gonna interrupt you. The next meeting's on January 11th.
I'm sorry, Jen, I didn't mean to cut you
I
off.
forgot to say that. I'm sorry. I'm interrupting you.
Okay, so next we have the curriculum committee report, and Mrs. Richmond is not able to be with us tonight, so Mrs. McCune has kindly offered to give that report.
Okay. So there's one item. Should we do a motion on that?
Oh, yes. Could we have, I forgot that there was an
That's
item
okay.
because there usually isn't. Could we have it? So I see Ms. Schaefer and Mr. Salmon.
Okay. So the item that we're voting on is a change of course title in the program of studies. And it's just to reflect, to be consistent with how we name the other courses at that level in world language, right, Kristen? It's just a name change, but it's not a change in the course.
Exactly. That's correct.
And then in the curriculum committee met on December 4th. The first thing that we talked about was the WAMS character education program and the curriculum writing that they did over the summer for that program. So for 8th grade, most of what they do aligns with Empowerment Day, the Day of Giving, Justice for All, and Citizen and Environmental Days. So they have these days. So the program was restructured this year in anticipation of a different schedule due to the pandemic. So the themes are implemented differently this year through morning meetings. And some of the themes that they talk about are overcoming struggles, personal struggles of famous people and how they overcame it, reflecting on their own situations and coping and managing through struggles. So that's all very apropos for what we're going through right now. 7th grade, the curriculum was revised to have an overall theme of self-awareness, and the 4 subcategories were goal setting, self-awareness, and continuing to thrive. Oh, and getting to know each other, sorry. So the activities and lessons were designed around those topics and gave flexibility to the teachers for how to set up the activities to meet the needs of the students. Some of it goes on in advisory periods, and they have choice boards and different activities to do. And 6th grade, they reworked the curriculum into a series of morning lessons, and the 6th graders are meeting more often than the 7th and 8th graders to do more team building and get them acclimated to being at WAMS, especially since some of them aren't in the building much. So they have a total of 15 different lessons, and a lot of them focus on inspiring students to get through difficult times, show empathy for others, and learn how to face challenges and obstacles. So that's the WAMS character education program. There were 2 course name changes. CP Chemistry C, which was conceptual, is now turned into just CP Chem, and CP Chemistry Mathematical is now changed to Enriched Chemistry. And that reflects the same thing that we did to biology last year, where the enriched class has an extra lab period. So the regular CP Chem just meets during its normal course period and has its labs during the course period. And the enriched one has an extra lab period. So it has an extra credit, it's 6 credits. And then next year we'll move it up to physics as the kids age through with the new type of classes. The next thing we talked about was that Mr. Miziak, Mr. Hunter, Mr. Blinder, and Ms. Fox have created an educational technology committee. And they started meeting in the summer, and they've continued through this year to talk about technology needs, some of which is related to the pandemic, but a lot has to do with long-term plans for technology for our district also. So the work started pre-pandemic with discussions, but now that obviously we have immediate needs because of the pandemic that we're dealing with, which I'll speak to, I think it's later on in the minutes. Mr. Shello gave an update on health and physical education summer curriculum writing project. So in Health 9, they moved from an informational-based curriculum where information is kind of pushed out to the kids to a more skill-based curricular model where students learn skills and knowledge that they need to make good informed decisions. So the units haven't changed in that course, but the way that they're teaching it has. So it's more active and like the kids are learning the skills and practicing the skills. So the units are unchanged. There's a big long list of them. Includes character development, confidence, self-esteem, self-awareness, stress management, suicide prevention, communication, technology, bullying, cyberbullying, human sexuality, healthy relationships, and drugs and alcohol. So they cover a lot of stuff in that class. In Health 10, they've integrated teen mental health first aid. So 4 district teachers attended this training over the summer to become certified to teach the course. And so this course is designed to teach students the tools to recognize and address crises among their peers and friends and what to do and how to get help from an adult. So we're very happy to see that program getting put into the curriculum. And then across the board in the whole district, the health department in the summer looked at how to teach health and PE in the virtual environment and how to manage the virtual kids and the in-person kids and how to do all that. Ms. Smith gave an update on the rotating drop schedule mock run, where they scheduled the students with the courses they had picked already for this year to see how it would work. And it was encouraging because when the computer does the schedule, it's called the builder, and it only gets a certain percent of kids scheduled for all of their choices the first time around. And so they actually got, I think it was a high 80% when they did the first go around, which is actually really good compared to normal. So it looks like it might actually be easier to schedule in the new schedule. Then they have to hand schedule all the ones that didn't get their choices and try to get almost everyone what they want. You can't get 100%, but so they're optimistic that it's going to work out. They didn't do the option 2 study halls in the mix yet, so that complicates things, but it's encouraging news. Dr. Lazovic explained that the teachers were given the mock schedules and they broke into groups to brainstorm and get feedback about pros and cons and challenges and questions. So they have a team that's working on this. I think he referenced that earlier in the presentation. So they're working on this and they're going to give a presentation at an upcoming Board of Ed meeting about the rotating drop schedule and how it's going to work and what they've been working on. So the one thing to point out, because it always comes up, is students will still have 8 academic classes to choose from. They'll have a common lunch. We're not deleting a class from the school day or anything like that. Kids will have the same number of courses as they currently schedule. Then Ms. Stotler spoke about a program for English language learners. She's talked about how there are students with limited and interrupted formal education, and the state of New Jersey is coming up with Department of Education a new policy to support these students. A lot of them have experiences in their former country that don't line up with our grade levels or curriculum, but they're trying to figure out how to help these students be successful in school and get through graduation. So it's kind of like an option 2 for English language learners, where they can get credit for some of the stuff from their former school that they went to, and then some of their life experiences can be worked into a kind of creative way to earn credit. So it sounds pretty cool. And so she says there are some students that can start working in this program, and we can use Title III money to pay the teachers who are working with them. So that's good. So that sounds kind of exciting. And then we had a big discussion about return to instruction, which was all covered in the presentation that we just got. And the only other thing was technology needs, which I spoke about before. This was specific about getting Chromebooks, touchscreen Chromebooks for the K-2 students, because we need more Chromebooks and it's better for them using Seesaw. So if we get those computers for the younger kids, we can push some of the current Chromebooks up to the older grades because we need more Chromebooks during virtual learning. So I think that was it. And then we talked about staffing needs, which was already covered too early in the presentation. Sorry, I was talking fast, but it's late and I want to watch the end of the Steelers game, so I was trying to hurry.
Any questions for Robin on the curriculum report? Seeing none, Mr. McLaughlin, could we please have a roll call on our one item?
Ms. Beckman,
Yes.
Ms. Schaefer,
Yes.
Mr. Savin,
Yes.
Mrs. White,
Yes.
Mrs. Korn,
Yes.
Mrs. Woldridge,
Yes.
Mrs. McCune,
Yes.
Mrs. Gray,
Yes,
Madam President.
thank you. Our next item is the Wellness Committee report, and Mrs. White.
We're meeting tomorrow, so then I'll be reporting out. We were snowed out.
Okay, thank you. And then we're moving on to liaison committee reports. Anyone?
I don't have a report, but I do have, I was going to read this email that we, because for the Municipal Alliance, it came,
Okay.
some information. Hold on, I just have to get it. It's from Rick Hager. He's the Community Outreach Coordinator for the New Jersey Department of Children and Families. And he says, Dear Child Welfare Partner, there have been a series of articles, they link some articles from throughout the country focused on the impact COVID-19 has had on young people's mental wellness. Social distancing has, for many, meant remote learning, no recreational sports, no birthday parties or school dances, no group outlet. For youth already struggling with grades or confidence or belonging, the pandemic has exacerbated their mood swings, emotional withdrawal, substance use, or behavioral conditions. So families, he wants families to know that there's help available. And the New Jersey Department of Children and Families, Division of the Children's System of Care, has free or low-cost access to behavioral health support 24/7, 365. And they had some flyers with some phone numbers, which I wrote down, I think, where did I put them? There's a hotline for mental health, 1-888-222-2228. There's a family support organizations. It's from the Division of the Children's System of Care, which is 1-877-652-7624. They say they have a free mobile response services, and it's, like I said, 24/7, 365. And personally, I think this goes back to, I apologize if I get a little emotional, but I know that the kids' safety is always brought up, but unfortunately no one brings up the serious mental health impact this is having on children. It's real. It's been 9 months, almost 10 months, not in school. And last time I had asked Mrs. Zarabara, who is working so hard about getting the younger kids in school, and they were saying, well, we don't know the long-term impact of the COVID, which is true, but we also don't know the long-term impact of quarantining perfectly healthy children for 2 weeks, or keeping them away from their friends, or not having them in school, or telling them that they're the cause of, they're going to kill their parents and grandparents all the time. This is constant messaging now to children. So, that's where my concerns are in trying to get back to school and get back to some normalcy. And I know, and for some reason for me, the laser, it's like, I wrote down that it's like a tunnel vision focus on the COVID is depressing to me, because we're missing everything else outside of it, which is just as bad, if not worse, for children. So that's where I'm at. So if you hear my frustration, and I'm not mad at teachers, I know everyone cares and wants the best for the kids. I have no doubts in my mind. But when we talk about their safety, let's talk about other things besides COVID. How about we start broadening our definition of children's safety, especially now after 10 long months of, it's just, it seems to me we're missing something. There's something missing in what we're trying to do here. So I know getting them back to school is important. And I think it's important for their mental health. And I'm afraid, I'm petrified of the long-term impact of that, because I think they'll get over the COVID. They'll recover from COVID. But I'm terribly, terribly afraid they might not recover from what we're doing to them right now. And that's all I have to say about that.
Jen, I have a question for you about the flyer that you shared. Is there a way,
yes, I think
that people can look it up? Is there a website, or could we put the information on our website?
Yes.
Okay. So go to the Municipal Alliance website and that information.
And I think it'll be there. And also I think Stephanie got it too, the email. So she
can go in the Friday folder or.
Yes, because it's like 5 and it's all different ones. There's it's the same phone numbers, but it's like different services that you can get.
Well, it sounds like some valuable resources there. So if there's a way that we can push it out.
Yes, and I'll make sure
put it
I'll
in
email,
the hands of the families.
I'll email Stephanie and see if she can post it, or because it's probably something that would be good for like the the wellness, our website for all like the wellness stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So
bring it tomorrow morning.
Okay, yeah, I have it on my email. I can even share it. I can share it with you guys. I can forward.
Thanks, Jen. Okay, that leaves us with public comment on non-agenda items is next. Do we have anyone waiting in the waiting room, Ms. Fox?
No, we do not.
Okay. And Mr. Syed, have we received anything in email?
Yes, we have a couple.
Okay.
First one is from one of our staff members. It's from Mary McCrae, 70 Quincy Road. I'd like to publicly recognize and congratulate Nicole Gahuli for being named the 2020 Boys Cross Country Coach of the Year. That was your public comment. And the next one is from Kevin Nolan, 88 Harrison Brook Drive, Basking Ridge. It looks like these are three separate. Okay, I got it. Okay. How are you planning to improve the current hybrid model if students are not going back? Then many parents were and are upset with the current model. So how will you improve this? And then the survey showed blended learning was assessed as mainly fair good, AKA mediocre. Most parents in hybrid would move to more instruction now rather than maintain how things are. Were any of the suggestions and comments parents posted taken into account to change things now, like the timing of specials? Also, students eat snack in school, which is basically a lunch. So I don't see how this is an excuse for not extending the school day. Thank you. And that is all for other than agenda items.
Thank you, Mr. Syed. Mr. Markarian, is there anything you wanted to add at this time?
Yeah, just making sure I'm not muted. So it sounded like the question might have been related to elementary school, the last one there, with respect to improving the hybrid model, because I heard something about snack time with elementary students, so I think it might have been referencing elementary schools. I think we talked a lot about the two plan amendments and how we'd like to try to make improvements to the hybrid model by trying to get the kids in for full days and making the lunch work. Obviously, the K-1-2 we spoke about at length, so hopefully those two measures would be some improvement for people that are trying to get or trying to advocate for bringing students into school more. And then that's obviously the long-term goal. And thanks to Mary McRae for giving a shout out to Nicole, and congratulations to her.
Thank you, Mr. Markarian. Our next item is board forum. Board members, is there anything on your minds you'd like to share? Ms. Beckman?
Sorry. I just had a question for Mr. Markarian. Do we know, or are you working with the county or the state level about when teachers can get the COVID vaccine?
So I don't have a timeline, but I do know that there are a couple opportunities that we're taking a look at right now that might facilitate the local distribution within our own district for our own district staff. So there are a couple opportunities to try to do that in-house to facilitate the speed by which the distribution could occur. So we're looking at an opportunity to do that now. As far as the exact timing of when that would happen, I don't know.
Mr. Salmon.
Okay, I have four things, but they're relatively quick. Number one is kind of my serious one, is that I think we really need to reconsider this like chunking idea of getting kids back in school, because it seems like looking at K-2 means like we need 7 staff people and more rooms and more space. But if we look at just kindergarten, we have staff, we have space. I know that the numbers are high statewide, and we're looking for that to come down. And however you do, whatever numbers you're looking at and whatever metrics you're looking at are when I say you, I mean collectively, like the collective people, what we're looking at are sort of arbitrary. Like you're looking at statewide total cases or statewide daily cases or Somerset County or Bernards Township. Like it's all part of the big amalgam of data that we're looking at for this stuff. But I really think that we should be focusing on what can we do for a particular grade where we have everything in place to do it for them. We're just sort of waiting for something to happen, but nobody, I know get better, but that to me is a little vague. And I think if we can do something for the little kids, and I'm harping on the little kids, I know that, but I just feel like, we've talked about this, literacy, mathematics, and really from the social point, it's making friends and how to make friends and stuff. I mean, a lot of the, if you're a third grader or fourth grader, you probably have a lot of the same friends you met in kindergarten or first grade. And like these kindergartners, they have no school experience, but for what they're going through now. The first graders missed out on the entire spring, so they only had two kind of trimesters of kindergarten before that. And then for the little kids that are even moving into the district, they might not know a lot of kids. So I think the more that they're in school, the better, if we can do it in the safe way. And it seems like we have the capacity to do that right now for kindergarten. So I really think we should push for that now. High school, middle school, upper grades, I think is a completely different story, and it should be treated as such. But for the little kids, I think we should focus on doing what we can do for them, like we kind of said, outlined in the plan, as soon as possible. And I don't know that the statewide numbers should hold us up. So that's my kind of serious point. Number two, the snow day was amazing. I think everybody in Basking Ridge was at Oak Street. I myself was there, was for 2.5 hours, and I think I lost about 17 pounds pushing my kids down the hill, and it was phenomenal. So I'm glad that we had a real, Northeast style snow day and not a virtual day. So if that happens again, I'm always on board for the real snow day. Number three is I didn't get to have my Linda story, so I'm going to tell it now. So when I first joined the board, I was on the policy committee, and I went to a policy committee meeting, and I basically didn't have anything to write with or anything like that, because I was like, I'm on the board, I'm a local celebrity now, I'm going to have front row seats at the PAC and get to sit on the bench with the basketball team, and this is going to be great. So we get the policy, and Linda takes out this memo pad that has so much writing on it I've never seen before, and I was a lawyer in a prior life, so that was scary. So Nick says something, and Linda shuffles through some paper, goes back and says, well, didn't we talk about this on this date? And wasn't this the point that was made? And I was like, oh gosh, this is like a serious commitment. So I sheepishly got out my Chromebook and plugged it in and started taking some notes. But so thank you very much, Linda, for setting a very high bar for a newly minted and somewhat lackadaisical board member. So I really appreciate it. And then my fourth thing is obviously, I hope everybody has a happy, safe, joyful holiday, and in whatever way you can do it, try to relax and have the best time that you possibly can with your loved ones. And thank you very much to my fellow board members, students, staff, parents, the whole community for working so hard this year. It's been really difficult, like everybody knows, but hopefully, there is a light at the end of the tunnel, and there definitely is. So, and as time moves on, it'll get brighter and bigger for us. So, happy holidays and thank you.
I see Suzanne's hand up. Ms. Schaefer.
So I was also going to say the snow day was great. So I think that was well earned and deserved, and everybody got to play and shovel. I also, feel strongly that we all recognize all of our students, but I really do want to shout out to the senior class parents and group who recognize the seniors today with delivering pizza kits to each kid, and we'll be continuing to recognize them on the 21st of each month now, getting toward graduation, which is, seniors were smiling all over town today, which was amazing. And I just wanted to thank them for that effort.
Any other thoughts? I'd just like to add, I don't even have a senior, and someone sent me the photo. I just think it's awesome, and what a great idea, and what a great way to perpetuate it with a monthly recognition of these seniors in this weird time that they are going through this most special experience. Well, typically special experience. So kudos to the parents that brought that together. And the rumor is that the pizza was delicious. So that's great too. I would just like to say thank you to Mr. Salmon, because you said it beautifully. You know, I think we all want to wish the community a happy, healthy, safe, and joyful holiday break. However you are spending it, just enjoy, try to relax, and we will see you in January 4th. Thanks everybody. Thanks to the board. You guys are great. Oh, Suzanne's hands up again.
Can we let Mrs. Waldridge vote us out for the day?
Absolutely. Well, really quickly, I just want to say thank you to our staff, because we can't do any of this without you. And special thanks to Mrs. Zarabera and to our nursing staff, and to anyone else who's supporting them and just doing their very best to keep us, you know, churning along here in this impossibly challenging set of circumstances. And with that, if Mrs. Wildridge, you'd like to make a motion to adjourn as your very last?
Yes, I would. I'd like to make a motion to adjourn.
Mrs. Wildridge, and a second, Mrs. Corn. All in favor? I see all the hands, Mr. McLaughlin. Take care, everybody.
Yeah.
Bye. Bye, Linda.
Bye.
Good night.
Good luck,
Good night.
everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.